Good to go.
Call to order. Stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. Glad the meeting's tonight versus tomorrow. So we're here for the bond hearing. Two bonds we have tonight, road improvement and the public safety building addition. We'll start with the road improvement first. So I'm gonna read off what the warrant article consists of. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $2,500,000 gross budget for the design and construction of improvements to the multiple building public roads within the town. A project to authorize $2.5 million of such a sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds and notes in accordance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA CH 33, to authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the date, maturities, interest rates, and other details of such bonds or notes, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply for and accept and expend any federal, state, and private funds that may become available in respect to the project to reduce the amount that must be bonded, or to pay the debt service of such bonds or notes. This has been recommended by the Board of Selectmen. 3/5 ballot required. Description: to fund the reconstruction of several roads and enter payment information in bond hearing. All right. Board of Selectmen, do you want to add anything else to this?
We'll let Chris cover.
I was just gonna answer any questions anybody has. I think I pretty much covered it, so.
So, open it up to the public. Ready for the questions. So we'll take Jim up in the front first.
Thanks. Simple question, for the purposes of the bond, do the subject roads need to be defined ahead of time, or will that be open?
That is open. They suggested not listing the roads specifically because then you're held to that, so.
Yep, good.
So I'm just gonna add one more thing. We do have, the bond payments for level debt for a 10-year bond. Next question, please. Dave Strauss.
Hi, Dave Strauss, Jack Russell, current budget chair, and my opinion on this is my own, not the budget committee. We meet tomorrow on that. So I just wanna get my opinion out there. In July, the budget committee noted that we had the highest property delinquent tax rate in over 8 years. And the lien filing by our clerk was the highest we've ever seen. We saw an almost $3 tax increase this December, as we all know. December 25, the budget increase is estimated at 35 cents per thousand for what we have provided to the town. The school is estimated at $1.52. So what that means, estimated, you will see in December 2025, not including these two bonds, another $1.87 minimum on your tax rate. A 10-year road bond is gonna cost the town $468,750 in interest alone. That's almost $47,000 a year in interest. You may have heard, or you might hear, that the $250,000 that we have budgeted every year in our budget to do roads is gonna cover this. That's not true. The 2050 is $1.15 of your tax rate. The first year impact of this bond is another 47 cents increase on top of that 187. It does reduce down at the 10th year, but it's still gonna be more than $1.15. In 2 years, the bond will do, in my estimation, 5 to 6 miles at the most of the 10.6 miles left to do of our roads. That leaves 4.5 miles to be done, which are not gonna be funded if we take it to pay the bond. Do we raise more tax to do this while paying off 8 more years of the bond? I don't know. Staying with the previous select board plan, those 5.6 miles of the proposed work would be done in 6 years with minimal tax impact. I ask myself, is it worth the high interest and cost and 8 more years of debt for waiting 4 years to get the same result? How do we handle paving overlays of the roads that are 15 years plus while we're paying for the bond? Previous select board plan allowed to do that. Cleaning 5 to 6 miles of road all at once. What's all those 5 to 6 miles do at the 15-year time frame, not sequenced out? If the economy tanks, we have to make the bond payments. The previous plan allowed flexibility, this doesn't. There's no formal estimate for the requested 2.5 million. Is it more? Is it less? Why would we be taking out that much if it's gonna be less? The previous select board plan was to do 1 to 1.2 miles of road each year and start the overlay as you could in between, if not after. Using the 250,000 and the unassigned fund balance when available with minimum tax impact. Fellow residents, I hope you join me in not supporting this road bond warrant and continue with the previous select board plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Chris, you wanna respond to that? No?
We'll just take more questions in that statement, so.
State your name, please.
Mike Cahalan, Hobbs Road. I'm a little curious about not naming the roads because you're concerned you'd be locked into repairing those specific roads. It leads me to be concerned of what the construction would be of those roads. I'll give you an example. Way back in the day, it was 1-inch overlay on the top, which only allows for a 3/8 inch stone. With a 1/2-inch stone and your overlay, your wearing costs, it makes it for a stronger road. So that's a concern to me on what are we buying. I'm also a little concerned on some rumors I heard about doing just a base coat, leaving that open for a while, and then coming back and putting a wearing surface on. If that's being considered overall, certainly if you've got all this flexibility, Chris, you're not saying no to anything yet. That would be a concern. That was what I believe was a mistake on Townhouse Road. That was paved over 3 years with base coat. That was in 2011, 12, and 13. Top coat in 14, but gluing it back together in 17. So I've got a lot of concerns on how that money's gonna be spent. And I agree with Mr. Strauss on every point he brought up. As well as, if anybody's not following NHMA's reports coming out about the state's budget, $2 billion that used to come into the state from the federal government is no longer coming. That's done and gone, we're not getting that. There's been shortfalls in the revenues coming into the state, just on the state's budget, so there's shortfalls there. There's like another 90, that was 20-something million, I believe, and there's another 90-something million dollars in shortfalls supposedly coming. And the governor's budget is due to come out in February. So those are all things that could impact us because shortfalls in the state, they're saying from NHMA that those costs will be trickled down to the municipalities once again. So that may add to the tax rates going up in the future. So I think those are all concerns that we should be having an eye on before signing ourselves into a 10-year loan. It's kind of scary. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Mike.
I'll try to address a couple of things that probably will maybe spill into what Dave said too. Obviously, it's pretty obvious anybody that's watching the meetings been to any meetings, or watch them on live feed. I have done a lot of homework in this. So I'm gonna address first, why not naming the roads? So we have bond counsel. When you have to bond something by statute, you have to have bond counsel. Bond counsel was the one that suggested and told us you don't name the roads. You don't put specific road names in there. Some of the reasoning behind that is if you have, let's say we listed all of the 5 roads that we intend and that I have gotten quotes and prices and looked at with multiple contractors on. Champion Hill, Jones Road, Drake Road, Pine River Road, High Watch Road, School Street, Ironworks Road, Winter Road, mainly. And the roads that have never seen any road reconstruction. That equates to 6.9 miles. I could tell you the footage, but it doesn't matter, but 6.9 miles. So it was based on his recommendation that we don't. The original quotes that I first got was just to do a winter binder. And then got prices afterwards to do a top coat. So a winter binder is exactly what it says, it's a winter binder, you only wanna let that go one season. Any more than that, it's so porous that the water will infiltrate that pavement, it'll start to break it down. So no, this plan does not include just doing a top coat on the roads. It would be capped before, another season went on. Nobody has a crystal ball as far as what the economy is gonna do. We don't. What we do have is a process that we're never gonna see the light of day of. I'm interested in how the figures came out that if we continue with the same plan, we could get this done in 6 years, when it takes 3 to 4 to 5 years to do a 2 or 3 mile stretch. When you're doing a mile of road a year, Pine River Road is an example. If we did a mile of road a year and then top that, that's a 3-year project. That's going on the way we've been doing things. And spending $250,000 without impacting the tax rate, and the rest coming from unreserved fund balance. Was trying to come up with an option that would do the same thing, that would give us more bang for our buck. That's it. Trying to give you folks another option to think about, to investigate, to possibly invest in. So we did put out RFPs for Pine River Road, the first 1.1 miles of road. Were they perfect? Absolutely not. We had multiple contractors that inspected it, gave us bids. It came back at $520,000 for 1 mile. We are proposing in our budget, what I've been calling option B, which is to support the 520, 250,000 to come from taxation without seeing any additional tax impact on our tax rate, because that is quote unquote figured in and has been for many years, $270,000 coming from unreserved fund balance. We know that we have that right now. I get that we don't know that we're gonna have that in the future. I get that everybody is struggling to pay their taxes and that the school is going up. The thought process was, again, we're used to spending $250,000 a year, that's figured into the budget. To unrealistically say that from now until 10, 15, or 20 years, that $250,000 for the taxpayers to not expect that to increase with the cost of things, we all know. I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. We buy a loaf of bread, we buy milk, we buy gas. Everything is going up. So that 250 is built into the tax rate. And we don't want it to go up anymore, but we also know that $520,000 to do a mile of Pine River Road, what's that gonna be next year? What's that gonna be the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that, and so on and so forth? I have done timetables, rough timetables, they're estimations, based on those figures and the way that we've been doing things. And I come up with much more than 10 years, much more than 6 years, 10 to 15 years. Actually, it's more like 13 years. So what is that cost gonna be in 13 years? So if you take the average inflation right now, yes, the bond is gonna cost us right around $450,000 in interest over the life of the bond of 10 years. But the inflation on those same miles of roads is gonna be well over $1 million. That's gonna cost us additional over the 10 years, merely by increase in inflation and costs. It's gonna cost us twice as much if we continue to kick the can down the road. It was an option. I've done a lot of homework. I'm almost talked out on this. I do hope, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna out these two gentlemen. We had a conversation the other day. I was a little taken aback by the fact that Chuck said he didn't support this, but did wanna put it to the people. I do respect that, and I appreciate that. That it's our job, even if we may not necessarily support it, leave it up to you folks, so I do respect that, but, I was under the impression right along that this board as a whole supported giving the taxpayers and the voters the option to investigate this, to come and ask our questions, and to see if this was a viable option. Other than what we've been doing and continuing to kick the can down the road. And, I mean, some of us may not see the light of day in the end of these roads being done. As that bond payment goes down, the hope, and yes, again, nobody has a crystal ball. The hope is that bond goes down, we can continue to possibly use the unreserved fund balance. And if the bond payment is still within that range of the $250,000 that we've come accustomed to spending, that's figured into our tax rate, as that payment, the bond payment gets closer to that figure, maybe we can take a little bit more, ideally, of the unreserved fund balance, if available, and put that into an ETF and recreate what was part of our budget for many, many years, a road resealing and resurfacing line item that got taken out of the budget at some point in time in the last 20 years. That was always part of it. You had winter road maintenance, summer road maintenance, road resurfacing, resealing, that was part of the budget. We don't have that anymore. So any extra funds from the the unreserved fund balance could create a new ETF that's road resurfacing and resealing that addresses those roads that have been resurfaced and reconstructed over the last 10 years. Green Mountain Road, Ryefield Road, Snow Road, Bailey Road. I've seen a piece of paper handed around that says, what about Bonnyman Road? Unless somebody wants to correct me, when we did lineation, and any selectman that's done that, as soon as you drive from the pavement to the dirt, that's exactly where the town line is. So we don't own any pavement on Bonnyman Road, so I'm not sure where that 0.33 miles of pavement on Bonnyman Road came from. But all those other roads that have seen it, and yes, does that leave some roads that are going to need attention? You have Cross Road, you have Old Pound Road. Nutter Road has a very small paved section to the top of the hill. And God willing, you know, maybe we can squeeze some of those in. Again, another reason why you don't name the roads, because if you have additional money, material, you can go on to another road. I just had another thought and it's escaped me that I wanted to bring up, but anyway.
Chris, if I may, just real quick, everything that you just said over the last 5 minutes, if that could be put in some form of writing, I think that would answer a ton of questions that this room has.
It,
Hold on, man.
Sorry.
Grace had her hand up first.
I know. So, just wanna say, there's some chairs up here if you want, come up. Grace, please.
Grace Miller, Snow Road. So I have a whole series of questions, so I'll give you the questions and then go back, or you wanna do them one at a time? So I guess my first would be in reaction to what Chris said. I understand about not putting something in writing about the roads. Would that be in the warrant article or just not putting it in writing, period? Because I'd love to see a list of roads that here's the priority that the town is giving. You know, years ago, we had the CIP committee that had a list of roads and the priority of them. So I'd like to know what roads are possibly on the list, notwithstanding emergencies, everything else that's going on. But what highlighted that was when you said for the cost for 1 mile of Pine River Road was 500 and something thousand. So there's 20% of our bond right there. So I'd be interested to know what the roads would be if we could have it. So that's a comment.
Okay, so let me answer the
Yeah.
question.
So the first question is the roads listing. That was by suggestion and our bond council wrote the warrant article. So just on the warrant article, the roads and the priorities. So that's one of the downsides, right, to not having an updated CIP. Which I do know is budgeted, potentially, budgeted in discussion to work on that this year. If you look at the CIP and the roads, they kind of skipped around years ago on the old CIP about the roads. They did jump a few roads. The priority for us, just like you could see, that what I call option B would be Pine River Road. It's by traffic volume, school bus routes, things like that. So the list of roads are as I stated earlier. I don't have it in writing. We certainly can and will, and, well, I actually do have it in writing. These gentlemen actually have copies of it. But it's just for the warrant article.
Not to
And-
put it in writing there.
Yes.
Good, that's what
And
I
the
thought.
$520,000 to look at that figure,
Right,
that's for a contractor, a dirt contractor to come in, move all their equipment, haul material out, haul material in, paving company to come over, set up just for that 1 mile of road.
which is what I would expect on any major road construction.
So, the example I've been using to address just that, the example I've been using is, people have a membership to Costco or BJ's. You can go to Hannaford and buy a 12-pack of rolls of toilet paper and spend how much money? Anybody, throw me out a figure. $10. So you go to BJ's and you spend how much for 50 rolls of toilet paper? $20, $30? So when you buy in mass quantity, it's cheaper, it's a lot cheaper. If you tell contractors and paving companies that they have 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks worth of work, you're gonna get that at a much cheaper rate. When we did the RFP for Pine River Road, I went to, excuse me, I apologize, I misspoke. Our roads contractor did not bid on it. We are proposing, and we met with the roads contractor, that the roads contractor is interested in doing the work. To follow the same thing we've been doing, that stops the RFPs from having to go out, the publications, the cost of that, the time. He's already identified the need for what areas need to be worked on, the culverts that need to be addressed on all of these roads that are in this list. Trust me, I have it somewhere. Oh, I thought I did. Yep, I do. So, roads contractor, along with our road agent, has done an assessment on culverts and things like that. They're very well aware of the problem areas. Our roads contractor has a gravel pit. So there is potential saving there. Not potential, there is saving there. Bottom line, there is savings there. When you buy things in bulk, do things in bulk, it is a tremendous amount cheaper.
So and that's going down tap, it wasn't going, but just to clarify. So are you talking about this being one RFP or one contract for all the 2.5 million? Is
Yes,
that what you're saying?
yes.
So
hold on a minute, you wanna touch on the roads or not?
No, that's,
Okay.
So I'm curious, so on the bond itself, so can we have a printout? I can't read that. So if I could have a printout of that, that would be very
Chuck, give her your
nice.
print, give her your printout.
Are we doing, letters on the club?
No, you notice, we have not shared that.
Oh, you could have shared.
Well,
I know.
think the public would be interested in that, not just me, but thank you. So
Thank you,
the other day you had said at the meeting that this would be a level funding that you're talking about?
Level debt.
level debt.
Level debt.
It's right there on the top.
So so our first year's payment then, when is the first payment due, I guess?
So it's a interest payment in February of '26.
Okay, and what is the payment,
$62,000 and change.
per what?
That's the first interest payment.
For what period of time? Is that per year, per week, per month?
No, there's 2 payments per year.
Okay, 2 per year.
So as you can see, that actually breaks down each month that the payment is due. There's 2 payments per year until 30/35, so you have interest and then basically your principal payment.
Just like a mortgage.
Vicky Kirkwood, Green Mountain Road.
I didn't call on you, I'm sorry, I was just,
Oh, I thought you pointed.
no.
Okay, so that's when the first one is due. So what do we have, if we can't make the payment, what's the penalty for that in late fees?
They moved somewhere else.
I don't know the answer, I don't know the answer to that.
I'd be interested in knowing that. And what is the, grace period that we have for late fees? Is it 30, 60, 90? The last question I have is, so do we receive the money in bulk? And what's the oversight for that and any reporting that needs to be done? So is that in a separate account that needs to be
Yes.
audited, or how does that work?
Yes, that gets held on a separate account, which is an interest-bearing account. So we can take that money, and our first, when we get the money would be August of, now, one thing that hasn't been said in any of these meetings, even if the voters, and which I'm hoping that they do, if the voters approve this, we still have to get the bond council, the bond bank to sell us a bond. So, there's still a lot of variables. If they do, we will get our first check in August of '25.
And is there a separate accountability for that? Like, does the bond council have to approve what we put in for expenses, or is that just our money and then it can be spent?
It has to, there are a lot of things that, once we get the bonds, because without having the bond, it kind of, we have, I'm gonna misspeak, I know I'm gonna misspeak. We have 5 years to spend the money. They don't like to see, so you can't, let's just say that we got both bonds, $3.5 million, and we only spent $3 million. We can't, and the federal government will get mad if we keep that $500,000 beyond 5 years. There is a separate accounting of that bond, yes, there is.
Chris, I'll just jump in real quick here on
Hold on a minute.
3 years.
No, sorry. Ready, so you're done?
Yes, thanks.
No.
Vicky, please.
Yeah. Did we not, at the meeting last night, didn't we say level principal, not level debt? I put X's on those 3 pages, that's what you wrote.
Last week, would you say? Last week.
Isn't that what?
I heard that.
Yeah, Rosemary saying that we.
I grabbed the wrong one, I apologize, I thought I had the right one.
Okay.
I know this doesn't bode very well for our preparedness, but for what it's worth, I did save out the level principal. I was corrected tonight that it wasn't a level debt, but it was my understanding it was level principal too, but.
Which we just happen to have.
Yeah, we got those too, so.
Jim, could you hand that to Grace, please?
Thank you, Vicky, and Rosemary. Level principal, right? Level principal, right?
That's what I'm typing now.
Obviously, I'm wrong.
Because it was the least impact.
If 3 people have it down, I missed it. Least impact, that's correct, Chris.
Just hold on for a minute, because you got a question, I wanna ask other people questions in the audience. Please, state your name.
Karen Anthony, Highlands Road. So this interest rate, this is what we were quoted 7 months ago. What are the chances of it changing, and is it fixed or variable?
We just got this updated this week.
It had been 3.19.
It had been 3.19, it's 3.25, that was this week,
Is it fixed or
and it's fixed. It says fixed right on it somewhere.
It's a fixed rate?
Answer your question? Yes, sir.
I'm Mike Cameron, I live on Snow Road. I'm wondering if there was a Plan C or some prime that would take the principal and interest that would be charged to us and actually take that same money and collect it and put it in an account, let it collect interest, invest it, and then pay it when you pay for the services and the repairs, when you actually have the money. It seems like what this is doing is paying for repairs and not paying for an investment or a capital interest. It's repairing something that will deteriorate before the term of the loan. So is there any vehicle that municipalities can use toward that end where they actually invest money to a point where they can actually earn money on that investment and offset any issues with the growth and the rate of how things cost or how much things cost?
The only answer I have is there wasn't a plan C, to your point, no. And these aren't repairs, these are reconstruction.
That is a repair, sir.
So Mike, during the CIP back in 2019, that concept had been discussed, but never got implemented through multiple select boards.
I mean, is it possible for municipalities to do that? What vehicles do they have to invest money and what kind of investments?
You can put money away in trust funds for future use.
Yep.
The issue we've had is we have been fighting uphill because we're so far behind. So there's never been an opportunity to save additional funds to pre-plan for future activities because we're making up so much problem that we have to take care of today with the roads.
Yeah.
We didn't do the roads right over decades, and as a result of that, we're now playing catch up. And we'll probably not be in that position to be able to pre-fund future repairs for a long time to come, if ever.
But I guess I'll stop as I have.
Mike,
Yeah, I'll touch on something that Chris said earlier about paving out 10 to 13 years. Well, this hopefully carries us a certain distance there on these roads. I don't think that Chris is trying to imply that we will ever stop paving on a yearly basis, so I just want to put that out there. The next thing Chris mentioned, $270,000. I was unclear as where this is coming from instead of unassigned fund balance. Is that from carrying over from past budget here, or operating budget, or just that you planning to take it out of the unassigned fund balance?
You guys want an answer?
Okay.
So through the budget process and preparing the budgets, after we got the RFP, meeting with the budget committee, we have enough money in the unreserved fund balance from carryovers and from unreserved funds that allows us to take that number to make that whole without, because that 250 is figured in the tax rate. So if 270 was figured in the tax rate, we'd be taking 250 from the unreserved fund balance, cause that number was 520, that was the price that we'd gotten. 250 was what we figured in, so we're in a position right now with the monies that is in the total that's in the unreserved fund balance to take 270 out. Proposed to take 200. Again, that's upon voter
And
approval.
still maintain that reserve balance that we've always wanted to keep in there to pay the bills.
So, and that was leading into this is, I know in the past, and for a long time, the town, people worked here, that you couldn't tell how much money was in our account at any given time. That's not true, it's just a big checking account. And we've proved that in the past with the treasurer having monthly statements from the bank and checking off as you do in a checking account. Checks that are cashed, outstanding checks. You get a monthly balance, so the bank provides this board, this town, a monthly balance. I was wondering if we could have the monthly balances for the past year as part of this presentation to know, because you get an influx of money December-ish because of taxes and July. If we can see the trending of money in and out for the past year, is that something you guys would furnish?
It's all public information, so.
Well, I know, but I can't get public information or anything I put in, and.
Well, look at it, Mike.
But I'm asking for this specifically as part of this plan to show our money trend.
Okay, we'll look into it. We'll see what we
We
can do.
do bank statements monthly.
Yeah, we do bank statements.
I know, so I'm just asking to see.
Scott has Scott has his hand.
Scott,
Scott Hillsman, Green Mountain, Christian, you made a statement that if this passed, if the town voted to do this, then we still have to apply for the bond. Is there any guarantee that the rate won't go much higher than this? Is that,
Yeah,
like, we should expect something in that ballpark of 325?
yes.
Okay. And the other question I had was,
But the rate's not locked until the day we sign.
Correct.
yeah, no, I
So it's-
understand there's
it's
some fluctuation, and if
flexible.
that has to do with the town's credit rating or anything like that, like, should we expect a much higher increase, or this is the ballpark?
It's the markets that'll drive the rate at this point.
Okay,
Our credit's really good.
okay. And then the other question, for your analogy about buying in bulk, I know you kind of touched on it, but do you have a close ballpark of what the town would save by doing this versus what it's gonna cost with an interest?
Yeah, instead of $200,000+ per mile to do this, we could see a savings of that being $100,000. I'm not,
Yeah, I'm not-
Ball-
I'm not holding this up,
ballparking
I'm
because-
just looking for a point of reference.
because the unfortunate thing, and another reason why you don't name roads, right, is you get a hump, and you think that hump is a soil that doesn't accept water, or it holds a lot of water, could be clay, right? Holds a lot of water in the wintertime, that hump today. You take that pavement off and you go to dig that clay out, and it's not clay. So we still have to do test boring, test pits and things like that, which is, we did discuss with the contractor and discuss with the boring company to do test boring to see what kind of materials are there in those areas that need the most reconstruction work. And then obviously the price of the culverts and price of materials, so when you ask, when we put it out to bid and they're getting 40 roughly, that's taking an average, whatever, I'll say $35 a ton delivered, and our contractor's doing it for $12 to $18 a ton delivered. That's
So
half.
if we locked in a longer term contract with the contractor, you expect those prices to get
our contractor is locked in for 2 more years. We had a 3-year contract, we just completed the first year, so our contractor is locked in for 2 more years.
let's state your name.
Dan Felix, I live on Henry Drive, 2, maybe 3 things here. One is just a point of clarification, Caitlin, you said you handed out the wrong sheet.
Yeah, you should be looking at level principal, so that would be
So where does it say that?
right at the top, so.
Left-hand corner.
Where it says 10-year
Instead of level
estimated.
that? Okay.
Yep.
I didn't see that difference at the top, but I just wanted to clarify that. The second is kind of almost a 2-part, and it could be more directed as much as Mr. Strauss as the board. Say we're spending $250,000 a year on roads right now, just out of taxation. What is that impact on the tax rate? And is that 250 going to essentially go towards paying this bond? Correct, for each year? So if we've got $250,000 that we're raising out of taxes every year, just call it an even 250, what is that portion of the tax rate? Is it $1? Is it $1.50? Is it $2? What is it?
Dave, can you quick,
215 has been stated here, you may not have been here.
I-
215,
There's been a lot of information going back and forth, so
So-
215.
$2.15.
$2.15, so the highest I see on the estimated tax rate increase for the bond would be $1.62. So in effect, we're saving money, or am I reading this wrong? So are we gonna continue to raise that $250,000?
That's not an addition, that $1.62 isn't an addition to the $2.15.
That $2 is, I'm understanding this, and this is where this kind of gets real fuzzy for me. I'm just a dumb hose dragger. That $1.62 effectively would take the place of that $2.15, correct? Or no?
Some of it will,
So,
potentially proposed.
So what's the total impact then? That's where I would like to know what that impact actually is. Because if it's $2.15 right now for the $2.50, but some of that is gonna go away and get replaced by that $1.62. You see where I'm going? I'm not opposed to the bond, but I'm not necessarily, based on what's being said.
Actually, it's $5 million.
So I did some math here tonight. And unfortunately, and I can do it again real quick, this is based on level debt, which the gentleman told me, convinced me that's where we were going with. The two bonds, the 2.5 and 1, equates to $444,375 in 2026 with the two installments. It's 4, yes, but it's 2 per year. If we apply the $250,000 that we have already have figured into our tax rate, that's $194,375 left. That I would propose, and what we discussed, taking from unreserved fund balance, much like option B, $250,000 to come from, go towards the 520 that was, we got the RFPs to do Pine River Road, and 270 coming from unreserved fund balance.
So basically what you're saying is we're gonna continue to raise that 250 to pay for the bond, and then as needed, as available, we'll be able to take the remainder of that payment out of the undesignated fund balance. But
Correct.
otherwise, if it's not there, we're probably gonna have to raise it by that.
That is correct.
Okay, alright.
Let Dave respond to
You all
it.
set?
I think that satisfies everything on that.
Dave, go ahead.
Just a clarification, that's incorrect.
Excuse me?
That's incorrect, just a clarification. The $1.15 is what the 250,000 that we budget every year for.
Right.
If you voted yes on this bond, it will cost you an additional 65 cents in December of 2025. For a total of $1.80 towards roads. So that's what you would see in your December 2025 tax bill. I don't know where you got the 160, but
It's based on the number right here, the current year estimated tax rate increase, the $1.62 right there on the screen. Caitlin just highlighted.
yeah, it's
If you're looking at the level principal sheet, not the level debt apparently.
level principal is 65 cents first year, which we would see in December if you approved it.
That's,
In addition to $1.15.
I guess the follow-up to that is, what's the impact to everybody's cars going up and down the proceeds? What's 65 cents on the tax bill versus a $6,500 car, but,
Okay,
alright, I'm done.
right. Steve,
Just like two things that I don't think were clarified that I understood with the, should we be okay with this bond? Let's say we get the bond, you said when the money comes in, does it all come in at once into a fund that we establish, or does the bond bank establish?
no, it'll be,
we established the.
we established a,
Does it all come in at once?
well, we establish a bank account, basically go into a CD or whatever we can do initially. And my understanding is basically we're looking at trying to get this project done within 2 years.
That's
All
correct.
roads.
But that doesn't answer his question.
That doesn't answer my question, does it all come in at once?
The first installment comes in, how many installments? I don't know the answer to that yet. The
Alright,
first installment is in August of 2025, and it's my understanding is halves. Isn't that correct, Caitlin? Is that what Steve said? Half and half?
That's what I believe. I'm looking right now just to confirm that.
and my second question is, who pays it, who pays it out to the contract? How do you get it out of that fund? Who is in charge of getting that out of the fund and keeping track of it?
We are.
Selectmen.
The selectmen. It changes every year or two. There's different people all in and out, in and out. Is there one constant that's gonna be through this 10-year period at all?
If we get it, if we get the bond and we lock into a contract, that will be your constant. You have a contract.
Well, I want transparency if this happens. I want to have reports probably every half a year of where we are exactly with it, how much money has come out, what it's been spent on. You can't just have this pile of money sitting there and
We know
decide to
that.
just grab out of it and use it.
Steve, that-
No more than, there will be accountability, just like there is the $2.5 million we approve in March or disapprove in March every single year, that the selectmen are the agents to expend every single year, and we have an accounting system and accountability, and I preach transparency constantly, so.
Will this be a separate entity from the normal?
No.
From the normal report that we get? I mean, you're gonna treat this differently.
It has to be. What do you mean?
You know, Leo, you don't even understand what I said.
The accounting of that account itself, you mean?
Yeah,
Yes, because it's a completely separate account. That's an interest-bearing account, and there are laws, and I just learned this side of it when I went to the NHMA conference in October about bonds, and as it turns out, the instructor at that class was our bond counsel of how that works and the interest-bearing accounts, and that is a separate accounting thing that we have to, they follow closely, the bond counsel follows closely, much like the installments and the payout isn't the same, but if you did a construction loan, obviously you have somebody that comes out to make sure that you're meeting your steps, right? So there is a, strict accountability system. Does
right,
that answer your question?
I just want to know what the entity was that looks over it, that's all, thank you.
All of us.
I just wanna touch one more thing, we do have auditors that audit our budgets, our
I want the people
That-
to know. Not the
I am-
auditor, I don't give a shit what the auditor says, I want the people to know.
moving on.
Fair enough, he hasn't ever.
Any additional questions, Dave, please?
Just, for those who didn't come in, I wanna reiterate that the 2025 budget right now between the school and the town proposed budget is $1.87 increase in December minimum. This bond would increase the 65 cents onto that, the tax rate. So those who may not have heard that, I wanna make sure that they heard that. And the second thing is I know myself and Mr. Seaman's numbers differ. I have full confidence in my numbers, thank you.
Any additional questions? Yes, your wife first.
Elaine Chickhouse Road. I just have a question, this annual 162 rate increase estimated tax. Why is that different than what Dave was talking about of 65 cents versus $1.62? Where's the other dollar coming from?
Please, Dave. Please answer.
I don't have that figure. I believe what you're looking at is if you use a $3.5 million bond and you added them both together, what you first started with, then you broke it up. Now there's two separate bonds. So you originally did one bond, and that's probably for $3.5 million.
There's two warrants, so it has to be separate.
Leo, can I jump in real fast?
Yeah, please do.
Hey, hold on.
So what you're looking at, Elaine, the paper that is in front of everybody for the level principal is provided by the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank. This is an estimation, so I believe their estimated tax rate increase is going based off of that 2.5. So this is just the 2.5 million right at the moment, that's just going based off those road bonds. So that 1.62 is what New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank is calculating an estimated increase of.
So there's $1.62. Is that on top of our current rate?
Yes.
Because then it's $1.62, not 65 cents, which was what Dave was talking about, so that's where my confusion is.
Well,
That was the question.
I'm not gonna argue with him anymore.
it's not really, because we still already have a 250 that we are accounted for, it's in our tax right now.
The $250 that we pay today
Yeah,
is already factored into that 353 number.
right.
Right?
When the bond bank's doing it, they're not factoring in our 250 they're
So
already
we're
doing.
assuming that 250,000 that you take from the unassigned
Well, 250.
250 we raise by taxation every
Taxation.
year
taxation.
today.
And the rest
They did not
reserve.
factor into their number when they put that in there.
Right, so that's not, nothing is factored into this.
And Elaine, I did have the numbers mixed up. The 65 was actually the building, and the 162 was the road. That kind of-
So the 162 would be, if we didn't provide any money from the town, start fresh,
Right,
it would cost us $1.62 for our tax rate. That's
so
an
we're
increase.
already paying that 250,000, so we're already getting that tax So nothing's going down,
Right, when you take a look at that.
No, won't go
down.
just to be clear.
Probably going down. Go back on.
Yeah, Scott,
Just, maybe this will offer some clarity if I'm right. So that first total payment is 353, 125, less the 250. We're looking at roughly an increase of $100,000.
go ahead.
If, Scott, if I may, you're only looking at just the road bond.
Yeah, I'm just looking
We're
at that one.
proposing two warrant articles,
Right.
so you actually have to take the 353, 125 and add the, 141, 250. Which,
But the two bond articles are independent.
It's almost $500,000.
The buckets, they have to be independent. We will get one
No
done.
reason to talk about the other
You
ones.
already put it aside.
Hold on, keep it down. Please, I'm trying to hear.
Yeah, I'm
what-
sorry. No, so I was talking just the specific bond, but because we were talking about the 250 already in the budget for that, so then that would, so of that first year's payment, we're looking at roughly $100,000 increase. Right, the first year's total payment, I've got
Yes.
353, 125.
yes,
Less 250 is roughly $100,000.
yes.
Would be added to the budget if this was approved for that first year payment. What would be added to the taxes?
Please tell us, sir.
That's where they're saying potentially stuff could be taken out of the unassigned fund balance.
Right.
Well,
We'll cover it.
also,
Yes.
that would be the
It's
250.
not a guarantee.
No, no, 250 is already figured into our tax rate,
Yeah, I understand that, but were you saying that would help offset some of this payment?
Right.
yes,
Okay, so on that first year payment of 353, 125,
that would leave,
250 out of that, because we've already got that money put aside.
Correct.
It's roughly an additional $100,000 that first year.
correct,
Okay.
to come from the unreserved fund balance.
So therefore it wouldn't be taxed, so there'd be no.
One question at a time, please.
47 cents.
You good, Scott?
Other than Chris's comment about that coming from the unassigned fund balance, the 250,
250 is not coming from unreserved fund balance. The 250 is already, that's taxation.
Yep.
That's already figured into our today's tax rate,
okay,
our tax rate in June of this year, last year, 250 tax rate. That 250 to do roads has been figured into our budget for a number of years.
right,
So we're not, with that, we're not proposing, so that's through taxation. And the 100,000 from, 103,000 from unreserved fund balance.
And whatever the remainder is.
Because if you remember, if this bond fails, the Pine River warrant article says we have 270,000 from unreserved fund balance. We would not be using the Pine River warrant if this bond passes, therefore we would have the 270 against the 103 to use.
Correct. You good?
thank you.
Alright,
Wait a second,
go for it.
are you good? Cause I mean, I'm just trying, I'm trying to
Well,
read
I'm
faces,
I'm confused by your statement that the 103,000 would come out of the unassigned fund balance.
So the Pine River warrant, the supplemental that Chris referred to, if the bond fails, we've got a warrant for 250
Right,
plus 270 out of the unassigned fund balance for Pine River Road. If the bond passes, we don't need to have that Pine River Road warrant. Therefore, we'd have the 270 to use. We could use 103 of that 270 of the unassigned fund balance for that first bond payment.
for the first payment. Thank you, Chuck.
I'm just gonna bypass and see a shaking head on Dave. Why are you shaking your head?
The warrant is the 270 from the unassigned fund balance for Pine River Road. That's the only thing it can be used for.
True.
You would have to put an additional warrant in, or additional wording to use unassigned fund balance for another purpose. You could not offset with that except for another warrant.
But that's nice.
But it's a nice spot, though, Chuck.
That is correct, whatever.
But it'll go back
But we
into
wouldn't
the
be
budget.
voting
It goes back into the fund balance.
Right, we're not losing it.
Yeah, Okay, but you can't use them.
Right, unless you,
Not a warrant.
unless you put a warrant out.
Unless we put a warrant in to cover that, we could do that.
We could.
We could put another article in to cover that
It's not until,
eventually.
our first payment isn't until 2026.
Okay, yeah, the first payment,
Until
yeah,
2026.
Chris just made a point too, the first payment's 2026,
Okay,
so we could put it in for next year.
okay.
2026 budget could include.
I'm sorry, Steve, but Mike's been having his hand up, so I'm gonna call on Mike first.
I'll try to be real quick here. So this is just a budgeting tool that we use in the state to make it easy for people to understand your tax impact. Our town right now is valued at about $215 million. So what that does when you divide it down by 1,000, it gives you 215. And that's basically rule of thumb, $1 on your tax rate for every $215,000 this town spends, it raises your taxes about, I don't know if that's helpful for anybody, understand where we're going. You spend $21,500, that's a 10%, a 10-cent increase on your individual tax bill. That's all I want.
All right, thank you, Mike. Steve?
Just to be clear, Leo, if you take money out of the unassigned fund balance, that doesn't affect taxation because it's already in the coffers, correct?
Correct.
So, all right, so if you took the 250 out of the 353, you're down to $103,000 is which we have to make up for the first payment, right? So if you took that out of the unassigned fund balance, then there would be no tax impact for those funds, other than the fact that it was already figured into our taxation, but there'd be no
Additional.
more taxes added on at that point, correct? So it wouldn't have an impact that way.
Yeah, it's in the unreserved, it's there,
Just the
yeah,
first year.
yeah, first year.
All right, just wanted, that's what I'm just trying to make.
You're good.
Thank you.
So my hose dragging math, that $270,000 that is going to be the supplemental warrant if this fails,
Which we can't use.
that is for 26 for the first payment, so it doesn't matter for 25. So that's where it gets into next year's warrant. But that $270,000 that is currently in the unassigned fund balance to pave Pine River Road will pay the first additional 3.5 years above that $250,000 that we're already raising by taxation. So I'm sure within 3.5 years, there's gonna be an additional,
Yeah, put in ETF.
we've got $29,000 left over after 3 years out of that 270.
ETF.
So,
This thing, we can look at, right?
and it will be, by the time the 3 years is done, all those roads will be paved, theoretically. So, just that much, again, post dragging math, if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me.
And they will.
We will.
I'm sure.
You might, we'll be checking it. Any additional questions? We can move on to the,
No, I have one statement though. Just Chris brought my name up, so I want to clarify some stuff. So I did have a conversation with Chris a little over 2.5 months ago in this very room, telling him that doing this bond was not a good money decision. Unfortunately, the town has no good decisions relative to getting our roads fixed. So it's which of the bad decisions do you want to go with and which has the least impact of the bad decisions? My reason for saying that at that time is I also know there's another bond we're gonna talk about in a minute, which means the total bonding we'd be looking at is $3.5 million. And committing the town to that kind of payment for 10 years, knowing that we have bigger issues happening. I believe in the last 48 hours, all the federal money has been frozen by the US government. So the grants we've been getting have stopped. We already know that the school funding that we were getting from the state is going to be reduced, because this town has gotten grants per student of a little over $4,000 a year because of our poverty situation relative to other towns. That's gonna be reduced. Guess who gets to make up that shortage? The town. Other grants we're getting in, we're gonna see reduced. The state is already in a money situation, if you haven't looked at it. There, as Mike Cahalan said, the business profits tax is down. Other taxes are down, the revenues for the state are in a shortfall situation, which means they're going to cut what's coming back to the towns. From a strategic money management area, looking at the impact for the overall town, I've got severe questions on the strategy of locking the town in for 10 years at this kind of payment structure with no latitude, other than raising the taxes on the people. If you look at the growth rate in the school system just over the last 3 to 4 years, we have a lot of new people moving into town, and they're bringing in families of kids at 18 grand a pop. Your taxes in the schools are gonna continue to go up, not go down. Our school state grants to reduce our taxes are going to go down, which means we have to make it up. There are too many variables out there right now and too many uncertainties relative to the finances for the town to lock us in. Don't get me wrong, Chris has done a damn good job doing a ton of work on this thing. He spent hundreds of hours on it, doing the homework for it. And everything he's brought to the table would solve an issue in getting a lot of our paved roads done within a 10-year period of time. And it's not the roads I'm worried about, it's locking the town into the money. So I told Chris up front, I will support and I will vote to support to bring this bond issue in both cases to the people, because I want the citizens to make up the decision. I've listened and I've watched the social media and screaming about the quality of our roads for the last 6 years. It's time to put up or shut up. If you want to spend the money, do it. But then I don't want to hear about it anymore. But then don't scream about your taxes going up, because they're gonna go up quite a bit to do it. There's a trade-off, and it's not gonna be cheap to do it. I personally am voting no on the road bond, and I told Chris that 2 months ago. But I want the people to decide it, and if the people decide they want to go with the bond, I'll support it, no problem. No issues. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Heidi Foy, Lord's Hill. So if we do not go with this route, and thank you for all your work, are you saying that we just stop maintaining roads?
No.
Then what is the plan?
The next one's from Pine River. If this article
One
fails,
road at a time?
this warrant article fails, we have the Pine River comes up,
So we do one road at a time?
like we've been doing for the last 20 years.
And keep in mind, I'm gonna be right up front and honest, okay? If this fails, and it comes to the warrant article, I, as a selectman and a citizen and taxpayer, will do my best to see to it that we're not spending $520,000 to do 1 mile of Pine River Road. Where if we can get that done, if we have to throw out those bids and start over, that's what I would be willing to do. But Chuck said it, it's time to, I mean, he's talked about the population increase. The roads that are beat up and the roads that are in the condition that we all drive on now are not getting better, they're getting worse. You add more population, it's more traffic that's flowing on these roads. We're a bypass, we're a bypass that we can't stop. We had, I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole for a second, if I may be allowed, Mr. Chairman, but.
You're allowed.
This past summer, we actually had, because of the influx of traffic, because Green Mountain Road. The toll road. I actually contacted the state of New Hampshire to see if it was at all possible for us to put up a toll. Because a constituent in this town asked us to. So I did. Because we're a shortcut to get around that traffic that on a weekend backs up to the former Ward's Boat Shop, the bypass on Route 16. That's 6-7 miles from the traffic lights of Route 28. The only good thing that comes out of that, when they're bumper to bumper on Elm Street and Green Mountain Road, they can't drive very fast. I mean, we put traffic counters on there and the average speed, I believe, is 37 miles an hour, if I remember that correctly.
Especially if you can't get across 16.
But having said that, that traffic is on our roads. And a lot of that traffic is Pine River Road. And it's going to deteriorate more and more and more and more. And if we are hiring responsible and qualified contractors to do the work, which we are, which we look towards, the life expectancy of a road isn't 5 or 6 years. It has been 15 years since, and Mike is right, I agreed and I made that statement, that there was a base layer of pavement left down too long on Townhouse Road, so that started deteriorating that road much faster. But as we sit here tonight, Townhouse Road is 15 years old since that was reconstructed. And with the exception of the strange winters we've been having with the Arctic freezes and summer-like, spring-like weather, that raises havoc in the state of New Hampshire, the good old granite state, on our roads. So you do get a little humps and bumps, and the pavement, the top layer of pavement is starting to come up on that first section, but I think it's done darn well. And we're talking about some of the same contractors doing the same work. So the life expectancy by DOT standards, and we put it right in our RFPs, is 15 to 20 years. It's not my word, it's in writing. DOT standard is 15 to 20 years life expectancy.
Good, thank you very much, Chris.
Just quick, so is it cost effective to keep the dirt roads?
Yes.
Because it just seems like
Depends on volume.
Right.
volume of.
Yeah, Pine River,
The volume of traffic on a road will either deteriorate it faster or not.
Or what?
And we actually did a traffic study with Lakes Region about 3-4 years ago. And we looked at a number of the roads, and the heavy roads we have in town are actually our paved roads. So it does pay to do those, because otherwise we'd be doing a much higher maintenance cost on the gravel roads with that traffic.
hold on a minute, Chris, go ahead.
The one thing I keep forgetting that I wanna add to this is the longer we also wait on these roads that are completely beat up, that actually costs us more money in winter maintenance. And the reason why is a normal shape of a road has a crown on top and it's level. So you salt and you put material for ice melt, for getting the slush and stuff off the roads, and the crown of that road, and you let nature take its course and it creates a brine, a liquid, and it melts the snow and ice off in the road a lot faster. When that is beat up, it can't travel like it's supposed to. So it actually takes more product to get the job done. We taxpayers, and it's been like that for many, many years, we buy the product, it's not figured into the contract. So if those roads, the sooner those roads can get in better condition, we're also saving money on the winter side of it as well.
Antonio, did I understand the budget chairman to say that tax arrears have become a serious problem for the last 8 years? And if so, how do you compensate for taxes not being paid? Is that deficit coming
Oh, you're
out
talking
of
about
reserve funds?
the delinquent taxes?
I'm sorry?
Taxes not being paid, you're saying? It's hard to understand.
Delinquent taxes?
Delinquent taxes,
Okay,
he
good.
said, have been a serious issue. So if taxes aren't being paid, how do you compensate for that loss of revenue? Is it coming out of your reserve funds to pay bills?
We cut back our
You
expenses,
can't.
Or our taxes go up.
or our taxes go up, one or the other. We try to keep our budgets as low as possible, or minimum.
But
They've
this is
gone up.
not flexible. This is locked in for 10 years, right?
True,
Right.
but we're doing roads every year. We're locked in for roads, rebuilding roads every year, $500,000 a road, mile.
For so many years, we survived without these high budgets for roads. How did we manage to do that?
So can I do my pot roast story? I'm sure that would probably bore a lot of people, including Steve apparently,
No more stories.
but, yeah. So that was an analogy that was given to me about the thought process of that's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always been.
No,
Well, the longer we go with that's the way it's always been,
But if
the
you
more
don't
money
have-
it's gonna cost us when it comes time to fix it.
process of where do you cut your budget if you don't have the funds coming in is big issue, isn't it?
It is.
It is.
You
But I
have to
mean,
drive slower.
the funds do come in sooner or later, or else they go for foreclosure. So either way you look at it, for 3 years, we're stuck. If they don't wanna pay their taxes. But at the end of 3 years, we get the property, we sell the property, it goes back in the tax roll.
We're really getting off track.
No, we are, so, sorry. Jim, please,
Thank you.
thanks for bringing.
I'd just like to chain on to what Chuck said, and for those who don't know me, Jim Pittman, Townhouse Road, some of you may know I'm the town representative to the school district. And yeah, I'm also on the finance committee, thank you again. My term will be ending in March. I just wanna say, the budget of the school district is not the problem. It costs what it costs. The big problem here is Concord. And the people we keep sending to Concord, who keep not funding our education system adequately in our small towns. And there it is, I mean, plain language, that's a big problem. Now, we've talked for a long time about that, but that's another discussion. I agree with everything Chuck says. We're gonna have all of these various increases. I'll point out, the common factor here is a great deal of uncertainty going forward. The state budget situation right now is highly uncertain and not likely to get better. The federal situation is in major flux. We cannot possibly predict what the next several years are going to provide for us in terms of inflation, the grants to us. Now, when I look at this proposal, I look at it like a mortgage. Now, most of us buy our houses with a mortgage. Some people might pay cash, but majority of us do. If we got a mortgage for 3.25% right now, we'd be extremely happy with it. Now, if we do this, everything's fixed, it's locked in. Whatever wild rides happen over the next 10 years in terms of our state and national budget situation, we know this is what we pay. Same thing like if we went to a variable rate mortgage. Well, there, you're betting that things are gonna be okay. And if the rates shoot up like they did a few years ago, you pay more. To me, in a period of great economic uncertainty, I would take, let's lock in these payments, we will know. And by the time we get to year 10, we're paying this down with inflated dollars, so the value of it is increased for us. And again, we get better roads. This is the whole idea, we're supposed to have better roads. It's not like we're just spending money, we're spending money for value. So devil's advocate, if I were to take the bet, I'd take the fixed rate. It's much safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Vicky, please.
Do you know how much we're delinquent in taxes?
Yeah, we do.
Do you have that number, Dave?
July was about 560.
$560,000.
$560,000 delinquent as of July?
I think we got,
That's 3-year total.
Right.
correct, right? 2 year, third year we would have.
22, 23, yeah.
Alright. We're gonna have to call it soon, but,
That gentleman hasn't
yes,
spoken
please,
yet.
yeah.
Mark Delisle, Railroad Circle. On the delinquent taxes, I own homes in Rhode Island and here, I live here, but, in my home in Rhode Island, they do quarterly taxes, which are much more affordable if you owe 10 grand to pay 25 a quarter instead of having to come up with 5 grand in one shot. And I just thought it's something that we, is, town could look into if they, if the people are having trouble paying their taxes.
It's a good suggestion, we'll look
Makes it a
into
lot
it.
easier.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I'll take one more question.
Karen has her hand up over.
Karen Anthony, High Watch Road. And to your point, sir, you are able to make monthly payments, it's just on your own.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, if you want to, you can.
Thank you.
Was there any, was there any?
Are you hired? Are you,
Huh?
you want a job?
No more time for me.
Come on.
Was there thought on why we got 2.5 instead of 1.5, or like was there reasonings why we went that high?
For the price.
Yeah, the cost. So, I mean, David said we haven't got any concrete numbers, we do have quotes, so everything we do is based on quotes now, right? So, Pine River Road, I have quotes on tree work from 3 different local companies to do the tree work, coming off of Route 16, for example. Pine River Road, there's 38 trees that need to be cut down. That road right there is beat up, and the reason why is the water cannot shed off the road, it's a big fishbowl, okay? So we have quotes, actual quotes. Everybody that we talked to, every contractor that gave us a quote was, they were adding a percentage. We asked 10, 15, 20% above for inflation, and do this on 2025 numbers. They did the work in 24, but do this on 25 numbers. And again, they're estimations, because they don't know the variables, right? So GMI gave us prices. Allstate gave us some prices. We have prices on tree work. I've reached out to boring companies. I've sat down with the road contractor. So we do have some prices. Based on those prices, that is where that dollar figure came from.
But we couldn't cut miles just to kind of.
We can, but I think that would defeat the purpose of trying to take the bond and get everything that is in the worst shape right now. And then as we go down on that bond payment, if it's allowable, and any extra money that we could possibly vote at town meeting to take and put towards a ETF expendable trust fund to get back into road resurfacing, resealing, then we're back into a maintenance instead of reconstruction process. Because otherwise, would have the bond, would still have some roads that needed to be reconstructed, and would either have a big nut right after this one to fix a road just like the 520 number for Pine River Road, or would be pretty much caught up, and then we're right back into maintenance as opposed to reconstruction. The crack sealing, it's not I don't believe in it. I mean, I take road classes and things like that. We need to get back to doing like the sand and chip seal, instead of you see the little spiders and you see the rubber Band-Aid that gets on there that the plows peel off, and then that crack's still right there, because you don't get infiltration. Get away from that, go back to road resealing and resurfacing, where they come with a liquid tar, like some of us do if you're fortunate enough to have a paved driveway. I don't, I wish I did. And you do that crack sealing and whatever, and then you let it dry. On roads, you can't do that, so put down the liquid and you put down a sand or a chip seal. There's all kinds of variables to do that. Get back into that sort of thing, but that's the reason why. Long answer.
Okay, I'm gonna take one more question. Susan, please.
I don't know if you mentioned this at the beginning, but procedurally, voting on bond articles. So this is early in the town meeting, the first articles, secret ballots. Is it 2/3 vote or
3/5?
3/5, okay.
And the poll, can I
And
just add to it?
And then we'll know the outcome, so.
We wait for an hour. We have to wait an hour.
Yeah,
Polls have to be
right.
an hour.
But as the meeting progresses, we'll know the outcome, and so if the bond article fails, then we could address the other warrant article on Pine River Road
That is correct.
as a 1-year.
That is correct.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Alright, so, Chris, thank you very much for all the work you've done. Very appreciated. And as a selectman, I also am for this bond, and I will vote for the bond at the town meeting. I feel that pushing the can down the road, it's gotta stop. We gotta get this done.
And just for clarity, this whole thing wasn't just, I know I talked about roads. When I started this whole thing, it wasn't just for the roads. It was infrastructure. What do we spend the most money on in this town? And what we're gonna get into next was the second part of this. And sitting down with the fire chief and the police chief and saying, because at first, to your point, Karen, is You know, it started out at 2.1, or, excuse me, 2.5. So how can we, what's that number gonna look like? So we said, we said another $1 million. What is that? That's cool. So what is that number, what is that gonna do to that rate? Where are we at with the 250 that we've got figured in? How much extra are we gonna have to come up with so that we can do something for our public safety? So that was my goal on the onset of this, wasn't just the road, so.
Can I add just a tidbit of information, just to give them all that reference, that traffic study that we did, that counter? Just so everybody has the numbers.
I'm talking a different study than when you did.
So, over.
This is gonna be on Pine River and Green Mountain?
This is Green Mountain, yeah.
Okay.
This is just so everybody realizes how much traffic's increased in this town, everybody can see it. I'm gonna give you guys numbers, so that way you can put the numbers to what you're seeing. So our little radar signs that you guys see on the telephone poles, those actually count cars. We hung it up over Memorial Day weekend right before, Jack Russell Road, if you're headed towards Elm Street on Green Mountain Road. In just a 5-day span, there was 4,815 cars headed one way.
One way?
One way,
That's like the average daily traffic count on Route 25.
correct. That just gives you an idea of how many cars are on our town roads now. And that was in a 5-day span on Memorial Day weekend. That has almost become every weekend at this point.
Massachusetts.
So I just want you guys to be able to have a number, you know, we're not just throwing that out there. That's one that we've recorded. If you're curious, the average speed is 32.9 miles an hour. So.
What's the top speed?
The top speed was over 75. And that was at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, we gotta move on.
At the toll booth on Green Mountain Road.
We can't.
I was gonna ask.
We did, the answer was no.
Alright, getting late, so we gotta move on. So the second portion of the bond for the public safety building addition. Chuck, you wanna go ahead and read this?
Sure. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1 million gross budget for the design, permitting, construction, and equipping of a building addition to the fire department to serve as the town's public safety complex, quote unquote, the project, to authorize $1 million of such sum to be raised through the issuance of bonds or notes in accordance with the Municipal Finance Act, RSA Chapter 33. To authorize the Board of Selectmen to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes to determine the date, maturities, interest rate, and other details of such bonds or notes. And to authorize the Board of Selectmen to apply for, accept, and to expend any federal, state, or private funds that may become available in respect of the project to reduce the amount that must be bonded or to pay debt service on such bonds or notes. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen, 3/5 ballot vote required, and there will be a description added for the printed warrant.
Thank you, Chuck. A lot of work done on this. I'm gonna hand it over to Chief JT and Chief Tyler to discuss this. We'll jump in at times.
So we've prepared a presentation, covering kind of where we're coming from, what we're looking to do, and what this project is, we're hoping to outcome with the project. So, we'll try and fly through this. I think it would be best if we wait and do questions at the end of it, so if you can hold your questions, that way we're not skipping through and jumping and missing information, so. Mike, at any point, if you have something to add in, please stop me. So we're gonna start by outlining the problem. So I'm gonna let Chief Eldridge start with this because it's about his.
Yeah, so obviously everybody knows where the PD is. If you don't, it's right behind us. It's in the modular. When I say in it, I mean half of it. Our entire police department is one room. Which it works for what we need to do somewhat right now, but not all the time. I'm gonna jump ahead here and just, cause it's one thing that I'm really stuck on is interviews. If we ever have to interview someone that we know it's part of an investigation, a victim, a suspect, any sort of that, we can't conduct an interview in there because it's against CJIS compliance, because we have sensitive materials on our computers, on our desks, in our case files, that people aren't allowed in there without us, being right over their shoulder. So in that case, when we have to do interviews, it's either conducted at another police department, which takes us out of town, or sometimes we've used this room, which is not ideal. That's one major thing. Another thing is our evidence storage, you know, our activity has gone up, which, you know, increased our arrests, which increases our evidence that we take in and our property we take in. We had to just recently, was it, I believe 2 years ago, we had a new evidence room constructed, which is already over half full. So we're running out of space in that sense. Another part of storage is our case files. We have to keep those for.
Tyler, can I jump in? How long do you have to keep your evidence?
Depends on the case. Like
Average.
it honestly depends on the case. Every case is special in that. I would just say like sexual assaults, the DNA kits, we have to keep for 30 years. So we have to keep track and keep those for 30 years in cold evidence storage. And when I tell you that our freezer is full, I mean it's full. And so we're running out of space. Our case files and previous reports, we have to keep those for so many years. We have no room to store those. That's why we have the Connex out back. You know, everything's being stored in there right now. So if we have to go back and try to dig out an old case file, we have to crawl to the back of the Connex, which is folded to the front with a bunch of other stuff, and try to find that box and haul it out. I'm jumping around just because there's a lot of things that I can't speak to for the security, obviously, of the police department. But I will say, like, it is starting to deteriorate. I don't know if anybody's been in recently when you walk in the door where it splits to go right to the police department or left into the other part of the building. There was a giant hole in the floor. Somebody actually fell through, which has now been repaired with plywood. So it's just, we're starting to patch that together. And in the summertime, we get infested with hornets and we can't figure out where they're coming from. And one of our officers is highly allergic to those. So he has to go in, or previously with a can of hornet spray sometime, and clear up the building before he can sit down and do his paperwork. So I'm gonna read off of this, and just if anybody has any questions, we'll start there. Effingham Police Department is currently housed in the modular behind the town office as a temporary measure done 10 years ago, but still remains. The modular unit lacks adequate space for secure evidence storage, file storage, equipment storage, and we're currently using the Connex box to accomplish some of this. Based on our Primex review, industry regulations, there's a number of security, health, and safety concerns with the current facility. We don't have a space to conduct interviews, process these vehicles, and forces us to use another town's interview room. If you jump to the next slide, there's the hole I was speaking to that's now been covered with plywood. Another thing I'll speak to is right now it's not ADA accessible. There's no ramp for anybody that is handicapped or anything to get into the building. The current modular building has exceeded its projected lifespan and therefore is in a state of disrepair. The steps of the building are failing. The floors throughout the building are beginning to fail, as well as the roof is beginning to leak. The building is nearly 40 years old and was purchased used. We store our evidence and critical documents within the police department. Security concerns as well as the deterioration of the building is placing these items at risk. And again, like I said, the building's not ADA accessible.
Alright, so now we'll jump into the fire station. So our current fire station was built a number of years ago. We don't have an exact date.
Which one?
I'm not sure exactly how old it is.
Prairie Field.
I bet you know, don't you?
Well, you need to let the public know. Okay.
So we don't have an exact year it was built, but it's quite a number of years ago. So back when it was
built and then added on to at some point.
correct. Back when it was built, it was strictly a volunteer station. You know, the folks lived in the area, came from home, responded to the station, got the trucks, put them away after the call, and went back home. That's not our model anymore. As you all know, we have daytime coverage now. We have folks in the station every day of the week providing coverage to the town. The station wasn't built for that. It wasn't built to house those people. We do have staffing again in the building Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. In the fire station, we have two very small offices. One's for the on-duty crew, the other's for myself, the fire chief. You really can only have one person in the on-duty crew's office at a time, which can limit their ability to complete some of their reports and training and things like that. My office is even smaller. I have no usable space to meet with any vendors, the public, or employees. If I have an employee that I need to address a HR, human resources type matter with, I really have nowhere privately to do that. We've sat in vehicles before to do it so that we can have a private conversation without anybody else hearing what's going on. That's a huge problem. That's a huge issue when it comes to the HR world. Again, if vendors come in to meet with us or anything like that, we're sitting at a kitchen table in the garage. We don't have an office to meet with them in. Additionally, in my office, I do store personnel files and things like that. Not a lot of space for that, and they're not very secure. So, concerns there as well. We do have 2 bathrooms. One of them is out of service. It needs some significant plumbing repairs for the toilet. And the one functioning bathroom doesn't have a sink in it. So our employees can't wash their hands after they go to the bathroom. They gotta go out to the kitchen to wash their hands. There's a quick little photo of the crew's office. Again, there are 2 chairs in there, but you're bumping elbows if you're sitting in there at the same time, and there is only 1 computer to work off of. So when they're required to write their reports after every call we go to, or if they're completing required training or anything of that nature, this office is very cramped for them to work out of. It's a quick little photo of my office. As you can see, I can barely turn my chair all the way around. I know, I cleaned it a little bit. Yeah.
Sorry. Well, you don't recognize the space.
I cleaned it up a little bit,
You knew that
but
was coming, I'm sorry.
with that being said, you know, I can't bring somebody in there to meet with them. You know, Grace came down and met with me the other day to look at a document, and she sat in the office with me, and we were like almost sitting on each other's laps. It's very uncomfortable. It's tough to have a meeting with somebody and speak with somebody in a professional manner in a room like that. This is our first bathroom, which is the out of service bathroom. That toilet is not connected to the floor at the moment, and the entire plumbing in the floor has degraded and is not usable. There is a sink in that bathroom, but again, we're not using the toilet, so it's not of much use. The washer and dryers that you see there are still in use. We do still use those for our gear and our uniforms and things like that. There's our second bathroom. This is the functioning one, and again, there's no sink in there, so.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is there a shower in any other one of those bathrooms?
We're coming right up to that now. Firefighter cancer is huge. You know, if you watch the news, if you're on Facebook or any of those social media platforms, you're bound to see something about cancer and firefighters. Fire and EMS personnel are being diagnosed at an alarming rate. For what it's worth, 2 of our current members are going through cancer treatments as we speak. We don't know for sure that was job related, but they've both been on the department for quite a while, and they've both been doing firefighting for quite a while. There's a good chance that it is linked. The best way that we can mitigate that problem is to shower and decontaminate our clothing within 1 hour of returning from a fire. We don't have a shower. So at this point, after a fire, we've got to clean everything and put everything away. There's no way we're making it back to our houses within an hour of leaving the fire. But even when we do try to go home, we're getting in our personal vehicles, in our dirty clothes, we're contaminating our vehicles, we're driving to our houses, going into our houses and contaminating our houses, and then we're washing our clothes in the same washer and dryer we use for our wife and kids, and the same shower that we use for our wife and kids. So we're spreading our contamination from the fire station all the way through to our homes and to our families. It's not something that we need to get fixed. We need to have the facilities for the firefighters to be cleaning up before they're leaving the station.
Also, not just fire carcinogens, we deal with medical stuff. You guys probably heard of COVID, flu, all those other fun things. We get all of that on us, and we are bringing the same thing, bringing it home in our shoes, on our clothes, to our family members.
Everybody's favorite thing, bed bugs. You'd be surprised how often we deal with bed bugs.
I can handle everything.
And that's another scenario where we're bringing that home for our family to deal with because we have no choice. We do have an exhaust removal system. It was installed a number of years ago. It's limited in its capabilities because not all of the vehicles have the plumbing for the Primavent system. It was only attached to some of our vehicles, so still, every time we start a vehicle, we're filling the station with diesel exhaust fumes. For those of you that have been in the station, you know what it looks like. It's all one big structure. So our kitchen is open air to the apparatus. The area where our firefighters sit is just a kitchen table in the middle of the apparatus bay. So the table we sit at is being filled with those cancer-causing carcinogens, and then we sit and eat our lunch at it. Going into the kitchen, we do have a small kitchen. It is open air. So all our utensils, all our dishes, all that stuff, yeah, they're in cabinets, but that's not keeping out the particles. It's not keeping out the diesel exhaust. That's not keeping all that stuff out. So it's not uncommon to pull a plate out and have to wipe it off and clean it before you use it because it's dusty or dirty.
Can we just vote now? Sorry.
There's a quick photo of what we do have for the kitchen, so, you know, again, we're preparing our food on these counters, we're cooking on that stove, we're using the dishes that are in those cabinets. There's the table, that's the table in the middle of the apparatus bay, you can see a vehicle to the left and to the right. That's our multi-purpose space, so that's where I interview firefighters that are coming in, that's where I meet with vendors, that's where our duty crew spends the majority of their off time. That's where we all eat our lunches and our meals. It's where we do everything, our department meetings and trainings are held right there because that's the space we're afforded. So, again, it's open air to everything, there's no privacy, there's no separation from the vehicles. Meetings and trainings, again, we use chairs in the apparatus bay, we don't have an actual training room. We can't really hold any trainings to invite other departments and things like that because we just don't have the space for it. It makes it very difficult to have actual trainings in-house or meetings in-house because we just don't have the space. Heating is extremely inefficient. Obviously, we're spending all of our time in that apparatus bay. Typically, an apparatus bay, you don't keep very warm, it's just warm enough to keep the trucks from freezing. Unfortunately, because that's where we spend our time, we have to keep that area warm. It's extremely inefficient to do so because it's such a large space. A Primex report, so I do have some copies of this up here on the table if anybody wants to read the full report.
JT, you wanna probably explain Primex?
Yeah, so Primex is our town's insurance carrier. They came out on November 25th and they did a walkthrough of the fire station. I'm gonna go through kind of the high points that relate to the building from their report. There is some other stuff in there, so again, there are copies here if you wanna read the full thing. They did do an assessment of the police department. As Chief Eldridge referenced earlier, a lot of the stuff that they spoke about is security related and things like that, and unfortunately, we can't publicly share that information. So, we will go over the fire department report, unfortunately, we can't share the police department report. Decontamination, we already kinda talked about this. We come back with our gear and it's dirty, it's got the carcinogens on it and things like that. And we bring it back into the station and we have to clean it in the station. We are thankful to have a washer and a gear dryer to clean that on, but once we come in the building, that entire building has been exposed to our gear, our turnout gear and our dirty equipment, and then we spend all of our time there. That's kind of the cardinal sin when it comes to cancer prevention. After we clear the scene, the firefighters again should be showering as soon as possible. Shower within the hour is kind of the catchphrase for that. Again, we don't have a shower and we're going home to do that. The exhaust management system, you can see a photo there, it might be kind of small, but that's the ambulance and the wall next to it, and you can see the nice diesel mark on the wall from the ambulance starting up and blowing out its diesel particulate.
That's not a wall, that's actually where we put our food.
That is correct, that is not a wall, that was in the photo of the kitchen, you could see kind of the floating island there, that's the side of the floating island that we make our food on. So, again, they're recommending that we fix the Primavent system, which would be part of this overall project. We don't have any kind of a room to store the gear in. As I talked about a minute ago, we're bringing it back and bringing it into the bay and it's open air to everything going on. So not only is it off-gassing and providing the environment with the carcinogens, it's also having the diesel exhaust blown onto it and things like that, which is further degrading it. We need to have a room that's contained to keep that gear in, to keep it away from everything else. That room would have its own like ventilation to the outside and stuff like that, so it's not contaminating the environment around it. Shower facilities, I've beat it up pretty bad. You know, that's one of their high priority items that they put on the list. Something needs to be done to have a shower facility within the fire station. What does it all mean? So again, the cancer causing carcinogens that we're dealing with, the dust, the dirty, the lack of space, it's all a problem. The insurance company recognizes it, it's all within their report. So with that being said, we've gone over all the negative stuff, all the bad stuff, so what are our options? We looked at a number of things starting out. Initially, we looked at doing a direct add-on to the station, so actually marrying another building to the fire station. It is possible, it is something that could be done, but there's a lot of structural work that needs to be done to the current building to marry another building to it with the roof structure and things of that nature, so with that comes the cost. We looked at the potential of building a new building, of putting up a brand new public safety building to replace the current structure. One of the topics has been location. We'd all love to be more centrally located within the town. But unfortunately, the space for that doesn't currently exist, and the cost of building a new public safety building is well in excess of $5 million right now. And for anybody that wants to fact check that, take a look at the town of Jackson, New Hampshire. They have a proposed fire department only. And I don't recall exactly what their budget was, but it was above $5 million.
It's 6 or 7.
It's $0.6 million they're going for a bond. It was in the Conway Daily Sun.
So, you know, that just gives you an idea of what we'd be looking at to build a brand new structure to house fire and police. It's just exorbitant and it's not feasible. The best solution we came up with was a new building on the property of the current fire station number 2. So yes, we're calling it an addition. It's not actually attached to the structure. They will be separate structures on the same property. Again, it's a standalone structure. It will house both police and the administrative and crew space for the fire department. The current fire station structure will remain in place and it will continue to house our vehicles and equipment. We've met with an architect. He does have experience with projects just like this, and he has provided us with drawings of the proposed building layouts. Again, there are those around the room if you'd like to take a look at them. We do have a couple that I'll pop up on the board in a few minutes here. Again, the layout of the building, it was done, all of us in conjunction together, myself, Chief Eldridge, members of the fire department, members of the police department, as well as the Board of Selectmen.
Then there's 3 copies.
The proposed design allows both of our departments to have the space we need to safely operate, and it provides that healthy, safe working environment that we're looking for our crews. We're not looking to build a Taj Mahal, we're not looking for this huge fire station or police station. We're looking for a building that can safely house our crews and our employees. The proposed design will bring the police department into compliance with some of the federal and state security requirements, which we may not meet currently. The proposed design will also provide the police department with a designated interview room, a designated evidence room, and a sally port to secure some of the larger vehicles and evidence that they might seize.
What's a sally port?
So it's basically a fancy word for garage. But somewhere like if we were gonna bring somebody in that was under arrest, we can bring them in there, secure it, bring them in, have a sit down interview with them, and then, you know, take them from there.
In our proposed design, the fire department, our side of the building is effectively split in half to keep the police side secure. We do have some shared spaces, but effectively we each have our own sides of the building. We do have office space for the fire department. We have an emergency operations center, which would allow us to communicate and function each town department head during a storm or a major incident. Not that we ever have those around here. It also has a bunk room for our personnel, so that would allow our personnel to rest during those major storms and major events. To be clear, we are not looking at putting overnight personnel on duty. That is not the intent of the bunk room. I just want to dispel that right off the bat. It is for those major storms and those rare occurrences where our crews need to rest, and we don't want them on the road driving back and forth to their house during a storm like the April storm. We'd much rather be able to rest here.
I couldn't get to my house.
Yeah, if you get to your house. Again, there will be shared space. We will share the lobby. We will share the secretary window. We'll have a shared ADA accessible bathroom, and we'll have a shared kitchen and day room. It'll be more energy efficient, obviously, than the current spaces we're using, even than the modular. Air conditioning and heat will be much more functional in this building. We also included a large training room in our design. We can both use this, fire and police, for training events. We can host countywide training events. We can have other departments come to our town and train with us. That collaboration is a huge thing that we can't currently do because we just don't have the space. We're going to equip the room that it could be used as a small secondary shelter if we needed it to. As we've discussed in the past, the town gets cut in half through a lot of these storms, and if you're on that side of the mountain, you can't get over here to the shelter. When those scenarios occur, we could house a small amount of people in that room for a short amount of time. It's not a long-term shelter, it's not going to be an official certified shelter, but it's a temporary solution to get us through. And finally, that room, we're going to consider it a community room, and we would encourage that space to be available for community groups that might need a place to meet and things like that. So that this isn't the only space, this room here isn't the only space to have a meeting in town. We have found out that the septic system and the brand new generator are adequate to support the new structure, so there's no work that needs to be done there. We have some testing to do to verify that the well is adequate, but at this point, we feel that it is. As we were designing the structure, we did our best to keep in mind potential future growth. So nobody knows where the town of Effingham is gonna be in 20 years. None of us have that crystal ball that was referenced earlier. We can do our best to forecast that, but that's all we've got. We feel, Chief Eldridge and I feel that, the growth over the next 20 years, this building should be adequate. We don't feel that we will outgrow this building in 20 years, provided there isn't a major change in town. Because it's a 20-year building, it's an investment. It's not just a temporary measure or, a Band-Aid on a problem. It is a permanent fix. We're designing the building in a way that if we needed to add on to it in the future, it's always possible. So if we did have that sudden growth and we needed a little bit more space, there could always be an addition down the road in the future. And that may mean that in 20 years, if we've outgrown it at that point, now we make an addition onto the building. We're not scrapping the building and starting over, but that's always an option at this point. The location of the building is relatively ideal for both of us. We have access to all the areas of town via multiple different routes. Again, we get cut off, every storm we have, we end up getting cut off from getting through different parts of town, but there's so many different ways to access Province Lake Road where the fire station is now that typically we can make one of those work to get emergency access into the building. There's an outside view of the proposed structure. It is a stick-built building. We initially were talking about a metal-type building, and based on some concerns with moisture buildup, we've steered away from that and we've steered back to the stick-built model. There's a front and rear view. The front view is the one with the windows.
JT, you wanna give them a size of the building?
The building is 40 by 100.
Single story.
Single story. And there's an interior view, so it might be better to look at the sheets I passed around. I know the detail isn't super great on here. Effectively, I'll start up on the top left. So top left, the big open square is the sally port we referenced, or the garage for the police department. That'll allow them to park a cruiser inside during inclement weather. It'll also allow them to secure a vehicle inside should they seize a vehicle as evidence. Again, that's a space we don't currently have anything for. Moving down that left column, that's hallway space. The T shape you see is all hallway space. The bottom left corner is the police chief's office. You can see a small bathroom. It's more of a staff bathroom there, as well as a janitorial closet with a floor sink. Moving towards the center, I'll start from the top. You've got an evidence room and a storage room. Underneath that, you've got a patrol room. So that would be the area where the police officers would be doing their administrative work, their reports and things like that. And it provides them each a space to work. The evidence room will be secure. It will have pass-through evidence lockers, which again speaks back to the federal and state standards that we may or may not currently meet. That this will bring them up to standard and make sure everything is secure in the way it's supposed to be.
I could speak that too if you want.
Yeah.
So for chain of custody, which is a huge thing when it comes to handling evidence, we elect an evidence officer right now. That's Sergeant Brian Baker. He's the one in charge of the evidence room, the organization of the evidence room, and anything that goes in and out, it's logged. Anytime that door opens, there's a date, time in, time out, when that door was opened, what went in there, what came out, and it's all logged two different ways. It's logged in our computer system that we have, as well as we have our own paper log. Because chain of custody is so big. In every piece of evidence, we also have two different chain of custody forms that go with it. We have our own possessed property report, which logs anytime we touch a piece of evidence, as well as if it's something that's gonna get examined at the state lab, there's another additional one that we write the same thing on. There's so many steps to handling evidence, so it's usually, if one of us takes it off the street, when it comes back, it goes directly to him. He takes care of it as soon as it goes in that door to when it comes out and goes to the lab, or we need it for court or anything like that. So being able to, have those like pass-through lockers, it's easy for us to just, put those in there, it locks from the outside and it's secure. Then he can go in from the other side to the evidence room, pull everything out, assign it a spot in the room, and then log that so he knows where that is. So when we need this for court, he can go right to where it is, grab it off the shelf, and off we go.
So this room you see down here is the interview room. Again, that's for the police to conduct their interviews. That gives them the secure space they need to do what they need to do there. This is an IT closet up here. This is the mechanical room. This is the shared kitchen and day room between both fire and police. Secretary's office, that could potentially be shared between both departments as well. It does have a pass-through window going out to the lobby. Down here is the lobby. This is an ADA bathroom for the public. Coming over, this is effectively the fire side. So this is the community room we referenced, or the training room, fire chief's office, the conference room, and that's where the emergency operations center would be. Staff bathroom with a shower, and a janitorial closet with a floor sink.
Is one shower enough?
I'm sorry?
Is one shower enough?
So it's kind of a multifaceted plan. The shower that's in this structure would be for, if we stay over for a storm and somebody's working a few days and they want to shower and clean up, that would be the shower here. Nobody that's contaminated with anything will enter this structure at all. Anybody that's showering for those reasons will shower in the old building. So again, as I said before, part of this plan involves some changes to the old building as well, and that would be combining the current bathrooms to add a shower. So that would be your decon shower when you're coming back from a fire. This is a firefighter's office here, so when we come back from a call, they are required to write a report. There is required training and things like that they have to do while they're on shift as well, so this gives them the workspace to do it.
What dimension is that room?
You might be able to see it on one of your sheets, but I know I can't see it on this.
9'10" by 10'3".
9 by 10, so how big is it?
It is a big room, and that room is also set up for future expansion if we needed a second bunk room. If we got into a scenario where we needed a male-female bunk room or anything like that, if we needed to split them up, we plan for that to be used that way in the future if needed. And this room on top is the current bunk room. You do have a door out here. This door would exit over to the current fire station, so if we were to have a fire call or a medical call and we needed to go get a piece of apparatus, that's how we'd exit the building and get into the current structure. As I said, part of the project is minor modifications to the existing fire station that will remain standing for apparatus and equipment. Existing bathrooms will be remodeled. It'll create one single bathroom with a shower. The prime event system will need to be corrected so it attaches to all of the vehicles. That's the exhaust removal system. And we also would like to build an exercise room for our staff as well. So fire and police staff can work on their physical fitness while they're on duty as well. This reduces the risk of on-duty injuries and things like that. The equipment to go in an exercise room is not part of the plan, so that's not part of our budget buying equipment for that. We'd seek donations. Planet Fitness is a popular gym. They donate equipment to fire departments and things like that. So that is not something we'd be asking for money for. And then in addition, we do a gear room as well to store all the turnout gear that would have some ventilation to the outside. So why can't we just make the changes to the current station now? We're extremely space limited there. We really don't have the room to build any kind of gear room at the moment. It would take away from apparatus space that we use at the moment. Bathroom renovations and the Prime Event upgrades are items that we could do now while we're still occupying the building. We haven't completed them yet just due to some budgetary constraints. We are looking at completing them whether or not this bond goes through. So one way or another, we still look at renovating the bathroom and things like that. Part of the reason we're waiting at the moment is if the bond passes and we contract with contractors doing the work in the new structure, they can do this work as well and we'll get a reduced rate if they're doing multiple works. Just coming in for that. Why are we doing it now? So we've already talked about it. The population in town is growing. the fire and police responses are growing exponentially. The staffing for both of our agencies has increased. We've got to fix the problems that we've avoided for several years, and what I mean by that is the police have been in the modular for how many years now, and it was supposed to be a temporary project. And again, the longer we put this off, the price increases are just gonna go through the roof. There's a quick little graph that we were able to pull off the internet. This just kind of shows the population increase between 2014 and 2023. So you can see 2019, it looks like we had quite the increase, but the trend is still upward. We're still trending in an upward direction. This is a bar graph showing police call volume from 21 to 24.
And
So
that's our total calls for service every year. That's what that number is at the top.
Does that include ambulance?
that is
That's
just police.
Just police.
So here's showing fire and rescue, so this would be the fire and ambulance calls. Again, ours are kind of jumping around a little bit, but ultimately they are still trending in an upward direction.
Just for a point of reference, somewhere around the time that Station 2 was built, I was going back through old town reports found on the UNH website today because the chief had asked me what Chief Thompson's term was as chief. And I found a report from 1976 that stated that the fire department ran 16 calls that year.
We were trying to figure out how many people lived here during that period of time.
Yeah. And we finished 2024 with 444 calls, so we're continuing to grow each year.
16 calls for the fire department and 32 for the rescue unit.
Yeah.
That year, so a whole, 22, I think it totaled like under 40.
Let's proceed.
Why haven't we done grant funding? Why aren't we funding the building with grants? So we've looked at the options, we've looked at the grants that are out there. There's really only one major grant program that will fund a building, a fire station or a police station type of building. It's incredibly difficult to even apply for. Our project likely wouldn't even qualify for that grant program because it's not a full build. It's effectively an addition to our current building. The other problem with grant funding is once you walk into a grant, they set all our requirements. They set all the codes that we need to use. They set the types of equipment we need to use in the building. They will dictate a lot of those different requirements that are just going to drive our costs up. We can minimize what we're putting into the building now as long as we meet current state code. With a grant, they're going to dictate a lot of the equipment that we use and things like that. And again, we're gonna continue to search for private foundation type grants that we can use to offset costs for equipment and things like that that go into the new building and maybe even offset cost of the building itself. We'll continue to search for those as we go through the process. Is the bond really a good idea? We're not excited about putting the town into debt for anything. And we know there's the risks associated. I think we beat that up earlier. We weighed out the options, our tax rate is where it is, everybody's struggling to pay their taxes, the delinquent taxes are huge, we recognize all of that. We feel that this project, the only way we're gonna complete it in a timely manner without a significant tax increase is through a bond. And being an asset that's gonna maintain value, it makes sense to have a payment on an asset that holds value. We're trying to be fiscally responsible. Like I said when we started, we're not trying to build a Taj Mahal of a station. We're not looking for all kinds of extra space and extra features in the building, things like that. We're just trying to get the bare minimums to do our job and do it safely. Like I've referenced, we're currently putting the safety of our staff at risk in both police and fire buildings. And we're knowingly asking our staff to work in those conditions. So we have to think about that, and it has to be in the back of our heads all the time. The process of the project. So we've had several meetings with a small work group. All of those meetings were announced at Board of Selectmen's meetings and the public was welcome to them. The primary members of the group have been the Board of Selectmen, various members. Chris has been the most involved of the three, but they've all made different meetings. Fire chief, police chief, the police sergeant, the fire lieutenants, the road agent came to a few meetings, and we have had some members of the public as well. So, Mike.
Told you I gotta move to Eaton if I'm doing it.
So, Mike lives here in town, and he has extensive background with projects exactly like this one. He's done it in a number of towns, he's done it his entire career. He is now retired, but I think we've coerced him to come out of retirement a little bit to help us out with this project, and kind of function as the project lead to hold it all together. The police chief and I are not builders by any stretch of the imagination. We're not project managers, so when it comes to tying all these different people together, that's way out of our experience level. Mike is gonna handle a lot of that stuff for us. Has handled a lot of it, yeah, it's not future tense. If anybody in the public wants to attend any of those meetings that we schedule, let one of us know. Contact Chief Eldridge, contact myself, we'll be happy to let you know when the meetings are happening. They're not typically something we have on a regular basis, it's usually something we throw together when we need to talk about something. So again, if the public wants to attend any of those meetings, reach out to one of us and we'll make sure we get you the dates. Mike, we haven't really talked too much about these numbers, so don't go crazy, but, because we changed from the metal building to the stick-built building, we kind of started over as far as our budget is concerned. We had pricing for the metal building that had already started, and we effectively scrapped that, and we're working on new numbers. Mike has reached out to a number of vendors, we're waiting for some responses back from those vendors to get concrete numbers. So unfortunately, everything I'm giving you now is all estimates. So we're estimating the building itself being somewhere around $500,000. Again, that's a very rough number, and there's not a lot of backing to that number at the moment. Electrical costs, $125,000 to $150,000. Our current town electrician did provide us that number based on the plan, so that is the only number that I have backing to. HVAC and electrical, $200,000, and that would include all the electrical work in the building as well as the heating and ventilation system. Appliances and furnishings, we're estimating around $100,000. We do feel that, I mean, obviously there's potential for cost overruns and things like that. We do still feel that $1 million will be adequate for what we're putting together. Did I misspeak on anything, Mike?
Okay, well, I could say I have no opinion, it really simplified life. So, yeah, the plans just are still being put together. First off, I want to correct it, the town did not hire an architect, they hired an architectural designer. Happens to be my son, he used to go to school in his classroom, it was Carol Beans' room. And he's been very successful and done similar projects. I did the Conway Fire Station years back and some of the other projects similar to this as a project manager, estimator, and a project superintendent. I've agreed to give the town a hand and move this thing forward. But estimating for me, a lot of people say, what's a square foot number? I'm not a square foot cost estimator, I'm a nut and bolt estimator. And that's been my success in estimating multiple large commercial projects, schools, hospitals, roads, and high-end residential buildings. So until we get numbers back from reputable contractors, this building will be built to code. We do not have a code enforcement officer here, but we're under the guise of the state fire marshal's office, plumbing inspector, state electrical inspector, and it's being designed to code, and particularly energy code. And this building started out as a steel building, which exceeded energy code. It was looked at as a pole barn type building, but that became a problem with moisture issues and how do you keep the moisture to the outside of the building, so that got tossed out of the window. Very inexpensive building, but then big problems down the road for all of us. And I pay taxes here too, just like everybody else. So it's in process. I think this $1 million, I cringe a little bit, especially if we're starting to do work out of this budget inside the existing fire station. I strongly believe the existing fire building itself is good potential for renovation, but it would be after this structure here. And there's some things that I see that could be done over time to make that where it's housing the apparatus a more usable space than what it currently is. So we should have more numbers put together over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Concrete, earthwork, framing costs, the trusses are out for pricing, the lumber is out for pricing. There's some frame contractors that have been contacted already. This will be a vinyl sided building. I know they say vinyl is final, but it's the most inexpensive way to do it. And it'll be a asphalt roof, because that's more cost effective. Metal is nice. You get a 50-year roof, but with a good architectural shingle or put on correctly, you get a 30-year roof. It all depends on how you take care of it. It's a simple building, The HVAC system, is like that's still, there's a lot of small spaces, so it's really hard to do with an air system because you're trying to shove a lot of air into small rooms. Because when you do an air system, you have so much air, you have to dump it in different places. So there's been talk about using additional heat pumps for that. We talked about doing radiant in the floor. But I think we don't wanna put a system in that's redundant, because we're gonna have to have cooling and heating. Doesn't make sense to have radiant in the floor and then ductwork just for cooling. I think we can streamline that. Number might be a little bit high for that, and electrical certainly can come down quite a bit, I think, as well. But all in all, it's gonna suck up $1 million. I said it to Leo months ago, so it's $1 million building. And housing projects right now per square foot are running $350 to $450 a square foot for regular residential buildings.
And we fully recognize that, you know, we may be using old desks, you know, old furniture, things like that. You know, if that's what occurs with the budget and the building costs have exceeded what we expected and we don't have the money left over to furnish the building fully, we're fully prepared to use old equipment and things like that rather than buying new stuff, so.
God bless.
Exactly, I mean, there's options there.
Hit up the Preservation Society.
And with that being said, as far as funding the renovations to the current building, I can't say for sure that this is how it would go, but there are trust funds for the municipal buildings as well, so there's potential that we could fund those renovations out of a trust fund, for example. Obviously, that would need to be a discussion with the Board of Selectmen and everything, but there's potential that some of those might be funded out of a trust fund versus out of this money. So what are we gonna do if it doesn't pass? We'll make do, you know, we'll continue doing what we're doing to the best of our ability. We've discussed other options, you know, we've talked about things like getting a couple new modular units. It's an option, it's there, it would be a lot cheaper than the $1 million, but it's putting a Band-Aid on a permanent problem, it's a temporary fix to a permanent problem. It's throwing money out the window instead of fixing the real problem. What do you do if you want more information? So again, we don't regularly schedule any of those committee meetings like I talked about, they're as needed. If anybody wants to attend, like I said, get a hold of one of the chiefs, we'll make sure you have the dates.
My business card's right here, my email's on there if anybody wants it.
Our goal is to answer as many of the questions as we can, we want this to be transparent, we're not trying to hide it, we're not trying to be secretive about anything that's going on with it. It's your building just as much as it's our building. You can email us with specific questions, so again, this presentation, we plan to be a living document, so the questions that I'm sure we're about to get bombarded with, I'm gonna be trying to write down as many of them as I can, so that I can include them in the presentation moving forward, because if you're thinking it, I'm sure somebody else has too. We do plan to hold some information sessions as well. Once we have the final numbers on the building costs and things like that, we will announce those meetings. We haven't planned them yet because we don't have the numbers yet, so it doesn't make sense to have an informational meeting without the information. So we do plan to have those, several of them, different days and times so people can attend them. Again, we wanna get the information out there, we want the public to be informed of what the project is, we don't want it to seem like it's secretive. And this is the same sheet that you've been handed out, it's talking about the bond payments and things like that. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I'm not a math guy. As Dan referenced, dumb hose dragger, yeah, me too. This is the math on the payment structure for the building, so, I know Chris has been heavily involved with this, so bond questions, I'm directing his direction.
Thanks.
Sorry. And that's my last slide, so, bombard. Okay, Mr. Chairman, you choose who goes.
Alright, Linda, yeah, called on you.
Can we hear from Dave on any comments from the budget committee?
Was that your question?
My own personal, I mean,
Okay, yeah,
I haven't met with the budget committee,
Wait.
it would be my own personal, but it would have to be legal to ask if you want to.
Yeah, so do you have a question?
Do I have?
You just wanna, yeah.
Yeah, is there another person that shares your building out back? Anyone else meet there?
Yeah, the zoning, the supervisor of the checklist, trustees, it's a multiple shared space on the other side of the building.
File cabinet?
Yeah, a lot of file cabinets. And the only bathroom is in there, so if they're in there meeting with somebody and we need to use the bathroom, we have to go in and interrupt them.
Or come in here.
Or come in here.
And how many fire personnel do you have?
14,
14? Are they all from Effingham?
they're not.
Okay. And parking,
Yeah, and I didn't address that, that was something I left out of the presentation, so. Excuse me.
You don't have to write it, we're it's recording.
Yes, so as far as parking is concerned, the parking lots would be redesigned. And we found, looking at the boundary maps, if you're standing out on Province Lake looking at the building, we actually have quite a bit of space to the right side of the building going towards our neighbor's property. So there's potential for a parking space there. Additionally, the way the building is gonna be situated on the property, it'll be parallel to Province Lake Road in the area where the shed, the lean-to structure is currently. It'll be over in that direction, about 30 feet away from the current fire station. So in front of that building, we would create parking space as well, which is kind of where the mural is right now, the firefighters mural. So that would get moved aside and parking space would be there as well.
any idea on how many vehicles?
I couldn't say that at this point.
Do you have a secretary for the fire department now?
We do not currently.
And you plan on having one?
It's not budgeted at the moment. Should we move into this facility, there's a good chance that Chief Eldridge and I would split the cost of one secretary to do both departments. But that's a future discussion that hasn't been talked about yet.
I currently we have an administrative assistant that helps me out 12 hours a week. So he's there 2 days a week, he's in the PD's opened up, so if anybody needs copies of reports or wants to go in and talk to him about anything, he's in there, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, not right now because he just had surgery, so we're wishing him a speedy recovery.
But we could utilize him for both.
Correct, he's a knowledgeable guy, he was a retired, liquor enforcement officer. So he's retired police, he's a very knowledgeable person in both the professions, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Melissa?
Thank you. Two separate buildings, is there a connector between the two, or is it, you go outside, you go in, you go out, you go in?
Between the current fire station and the new structure, they'll be completely separate, and yeah, you'll go outside to go between the two buildings.
About 30 feet.
I won't be doing it, I just didn't know if that worked for you, really. Or if
It's
that
not
had-
ideal, but
if it had
given
been
the scenario.
considered in the plan to connect the two, so whether, whatever, okay. And then on funding, I don't know if you've already looked at it or if anyone has, but energy grants are really big right now and there's quite a lot of money in there from the infrastructure bill. And I would encourage you to look that way. You're doing a lot of improvements, you're increasing energy efficiency, green things. There's a lot of money for green things right now, so through the New Hampshire Department of Energy. So I just encourage you to go there.
Good resource.
Thank you.
Thank
You're welcome.
That it?
Yeah.
Okay. Carol?
On the parking lots and the site planning and everything, are those covered under the grant, the parking and what you have to do to level the property, or is that gonna be coming out of other funds?
The hope is to include that.
Oh, okay.
That is the hope.
Yeah, I figured it had been cleaned up. Okay. I'll bring my shovel.
Greg's, ta-da. Sorry.
It's okay, it's getting late now.
Yeah, it is, past my bedtime.
So I have a couple of comments. I have a comment and a question. So my comment is, I think it's too small. I know that sounds silly based on where you're currently coming out of, but based on the growth, I know I've mentioned this to you, I just, for 30 years, I don't see that it's quite big enough. But that's my personal opinion. So I have two questions. Can you address the amount of training that the fire department has to do to sort of validate the use of the training room?
Absolutely. So we train a minimum of twice a month. One of them is a fire training and one is an EMS training. So anybody that holds an EMS license, which is the majority of our department, has a set number of hours they're required to do in every 2-year cycle to renew their EMS license. So we train to meet those requirements to allow them to relicense in their 2-year cycle. And the same thing with fire. We're not required to have a license for fire or anything like that. You get your certification, and then everything from that point forward is just continuing education. So we provide continuing education on common topics once a month.
And as far as we go, it'd be obviously a shared space. New Hampshire Police Standards and Training has actually upped our required continuing education hours to 24 hours this year. 2 years ago, it was 8. And it's projected to keep going up. Having a space available like the proposed building is, we can actually put out opportunities to host trainings, which will actually provide the officers of this town multiple free seats in that training. And then obviously other departments can pay the company to come in and participate. Due to New Hampshire Police Standards Training has done a very good job in offering a lot of trainings, but it's only on certain topics. So if there was other trainings that we wanted to host, that was an opportunity that we could do to get basically free training by being a host, which we don't have this space available right now to do that.
And from the fire side of things, as far as training is concerned, we're a smaller department. Our neighbors in Freedom are a smaller department as well. We've actually come together and all of our trainings are joint between the two departments. So we share all the training topics and we all do our training together. So it puts more people in the training. So with hands-on training, that makes it just better for everybody. And then it's also a scenario where we're going to be working together on a major incident anyway. So now we all know each other. We know how each other function. It's created a comfort level as well. So Freedom actually doesn't have a training space in their fire station either. So, the trainings that we have coming up, we're actually having to kind of scramble to find a room to do a training in. So they kind of do the same thing where they're in the apparatus bay doing their training, so.
When you were doing the review, what other public safety joint buildings did you look at and compare and contrast with what you were looking at for needs?
So we looked at Wakefield's Public Safety Building. We looked at Freedom's Public Safety Building as well. I looked at Milton's Public Safety Building, Farmington's Public Safety Building, and I'm familiar with Barrington's Public Safety Building as well.
Is that it?
I had one last one. Do you expect these meetings on the cost estimates and so forth to take place before town meeting? Before
Yes,
the vote? Okay.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Good.
Mike's had his hand up a couple of times.
A couple of things. First off, I really want to thank Mike for stepping forward. People would live in town with a certain skill set. Very good to have you involved, Michael. Want to thank all you gentlemen, whoever was involved in the presentation. I really appreciate the professionalism that went into that and the detail.
So Mike, we come into the 21st century.
It's a creep. It's a creep. Well, we got the tech guys, so that's okay. Another thing is, this is something we looked at years ago, that old building and bonds for this type of a structure. It is not a 15 to 20 year item. This is a long-term item. This is exactly what bonds are for. And the price point at $187,000 in the interest on something like this is a return for your upfront dollars. So I totally support it. If I heard this right before, there was $270,000 in the unassigned fund balance that might be able to be paid out in February of '25. But I don't think you can do that if that was the case, but depending on what happens here, that's probably really a good chunk of money to have for any cost overruns to secure this building and all its needs, because I think that far outweighs potentially a mile of road, somewhere a half mile of road, so just throwing that.
Thank you. Jim?
Just kind of a peripheral question. Once Chief Eldridge leaves the property for the last time to move over there, what happens with the modular out here? Are the other occupants going to continue to suffer? Or,
Well, we still don't have room for the zoning trustees and all that, so they will still remain into the building.
They just
half of it.
They will
right now on.
shore up the
Tuesday,
floor
and-
and the holes that are there and address the holes that are there, but that'll give them more space to expand. Because
But
PD
we will have to address it down the road.
And down the road, that will have to be addressed.
And I just wanna make a blanket statement, I don't see why anyone would oppose this project,
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
in my opinion.
Elaine,
Just a question for you, JT. What's gonna happen to the bathrooms in the meantime that are not functional in your existing building? Is there a plan or some funding available to resolve that, like, immediately?
Yeah, so again, we do have trust funds available. We have had conversations with the Board of Selectmen. The only thing we were kind of discussing is if there was a financial benefit to wait until we know if this bond is gonna pass or not, because there may be a contractor that, you know, is doing both projects and therefore there's a price decrease, but,
kind of looking at, you know, probably combine the bathrooms or what, we gotta iron this all out first. We're
You
gonna-
gotta have a sink.
You just use your foot to open the door so you don't touch anything when you run.
Yeah, but not everyone's as savvy as you are.
Okay,
While they're cooking.
is that it for your question?
That was it. I was just worried about the fact that we don't have a functional bathroom.
They got fire hoses, they have fire hoses.
And as a corollary to that, even if it doesn't pass, would you still restructure those bathrooms to incorporate that shower you need either way?
yes, yes.
Also, I'm just wondering if there were, just as a matter of comparison, would it be possible to get the layouts of the two structures that exist now, the police department and the firehouse? 'Cause
If you wanna see it, it's one room, we
I'd
can
like to
go.
see the layout, just so that I just have a hard time visualizing. I see a picture with a van parked one way and then a fire truck another
So
way.
when we hold the information sessions, we'll hold them in the fire station.
Yeah.
So, you know, people at that point would be able to see it as well, yeah. The other thing we might be able to try and do is like a video tour kind of situation. We could put that up on the website and things. So we can do like a video walkthrough of the buildings as well.
I can't so much do a walkthrough for everybody, but what I can do is I can basically stand in our vestibule out there and you can see our entire department in one room. That's everything, that's all the space that we have.
Or we could make time, and just come over here.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody would like to just come in and stand up there and just look at what the space we have to work with, please by all means let me know. I will make that happen.
weight limit?
One at a time.
Okay,
So Dave Felix,
excuse me.
I'm gonna put Carol somewhat on the spot, since she's the trustee of the trust funds. As people may or may not recall, we did have a public safety complex EFT or some sort of trust fund CIP.
There's a municipal building fund.
It was a public
There
safety
used to be a
complex,
public
basically,
safety
is how it was
Public
tagged.
safety building, CRF.
That's what it was, CRF, okay. That in 2020, at town meeting, it was decided to do away with that fund and potentially down the road bond that this building that we're talking about now, whatever money we were putting in on an annual basis wasn't gonna amount to much. I think it had
Almost
call it $51,000 in it at the time. Had we hung on to that, sure, it probably could have offset this somewhat, but maybe we'd have 60 grand in it.
I never would.
So, just as a reminder, what we did have for a fund, and it went back into the general fund for this potential.
Thank you. Steve?
I have a question for the chief.
Right.
Eldred. Tyler, is it, a police station required to have a cell?
No, no.
Okay, that's all I wanted to.
And there's a lot of stipulations with that too. If you do have a holding cell, if anybody's in it, it has to be monitored visually the entire time that somebody's in here. So if you put somebody in there, you're dedicating somebody to just sit there and watch them. Whether it's using your eyes or via video or anything like that, which is not something that we'd look forward to with us being in such close capacity.
I was only thinking about that if it ever had to be come into consideration for the layout.
Nope, it's not something that we were considering, especially being as close as we are to the Carroll County Jail. It makes just as much sense for us to take them there and utilize that asset us with where we're so close.
Right, thank you, sir.
Great. Dave?
My own personal opinion, I would have preferred us to do a municipal building as opposed to investing 1 million for 10 years in a Band-Aid.
Well, I wouldn't call it a
I
baby,
mean,
but
that's my own personal opinion, I
Okay.
consider it a Band-Aid because we're not actually addressing the problem we're sitting in. We're not addressing all the things we have to meet as a town to vote. That's what I would have preferred, was something, a long-term bond that would have minimized the impact and was grant funded, to give us some assistance on that. That's what I would have preferred. I fully understand the police and fire is inadequate. Believe me, our office is inadequate. We know that. And we're gonna spend 10 years on a place that I've been told for 14 years, when I've been involved with this town, that the fire department is in the wrong location. I've been told that by multiple people. It's in the wrong location, it should be centrally located. So we're gonna spend $1 million to put that in for 10 years. We're gonna be stuck with that location. Are we gonna be good with that location, is what I'm asking? Because that's all my feedback I've ever received is, it should be in a central location, and I would have preferred a long-term bond.
Can I just jump in on that one?
Yeah.
We got a mountain in the middle of Effingham. Tell me where the central location is.
It won't even
Thank
touch your house here.
You know, I mean, is it on
No,
top of
no.
where the fire tower is? Is that the central location?
I think there's a place on Libby Road, if I remember. I have a feeling he has a lot of land.
If I may.
Yes,
I would, that was gonna be my question too. If there's all these comments, what is the central location of Effingham? Because everybody said, why wouldn't you do it here at the town office? I can't do it today because I've reached that threshold of damn near my life is over, so, but in my day, I could stand on the backside of this building and throw a baseball into Freedom. So should we do it here? What's the central of Effingham? Cause he's absolutely right, there's Green Mountain. No matter where geographically in this town, we don't have, our center is the top of Green Mountain. So, the fire station is currently in Center Effingham. So.
The town.
But I was just bringing the question up,
That's okay.
Mr. Chair, because it's been brought to me many times, are we satisfied with that location, is what my point is.
It's the most centralized location.
People were asked, a lot of people have asked that same question, so addressing it should
Yeah.
be addressed.
So I think,
I addressed it.
as far as our station that's staffed, I think our current location is the best location, because, I mean, at the end of the day, like they're referring to, so we move it to Green Mountain Road, because it's closer to 25, but what about the people on Remick Road? Now our response time doubled to get there. We are kind of in the middle of everything, when you consider that our coverage area goes that far back towards Wakefield as well.
Main road.
Yeah.
And on top of that, if I may,
Dan.
where we're, just as far as response is concerned, I'm staying on the same topic.
Yeah, but you're.
Where the station is now for a actual fire call, where mutual aid will be involved, if we move to this side, we're gonna be arriving at the same time as our mutual aid. Whereas where we are now, we are relying on mutual aid, but they will be getting to the call before us, but we can still get to the south end of town well before them.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm not.
Hold on.
Thanks, Mike.
See ya, Mike.
Thank you.
For all your work you're doing.
Leo, I'm not finished with the last comment.
I'm not either.
We're gonna hold off from the interruptions and let JT finish.
So, again, as I stated, I feel that as far as a staff station, our current location is the most appropriate location. Yes, we're a few minutes from Route 25, but we're a few minutes from Remick Road. But we can access everything. We have multiple different travel routes to get to different parts of town from where we are currently. I think it's the best place we could be. However, for a secondary station to house apparatus elsewhere, I agree that the location of our current 2 fire stations may not be the best choice. I would love to see us have a secondary station just to store a truck in, maybe out on the 25 corridor, maybe on Storage Road somewhere near the salt shed, something of that nature to be a secondary station, to at least have a piece of apparatus over on this side of the mountain that volunteers responding in from home could go grab, for example. That would be my caveat to that.
And as far as from our standpoint, that like Chris said, that is the center of Effingham. You know, we're out here on 25. Our town roads are all that way, which is where we want to be. I can't tell you how many times I've gone, being out on patrol, I have to, print off a piece of paperwork to go serve somewhere. I go to the fire station and do it because it's closer for me. I go there, I print it, and then I'm going back to Bonnyman Road to serve a piece of paperwork, rather than driving all the way back here to print it, to drive all the way back down south. Same thing, like going over Townhouse Road to get to Green Mountain, Elm Street, Drake Road, any of those roads over there, it's faster for us to go from, say, the Province Lake Road area than to come out and around. It takes the same amount of time. It's a straight shot up and over.
Thank you, Tyler. Dave had one more question.
Well, no, he answered, he answered it for me, thank you.
Okay, great. Grace.
I was going to ask Chief Harmon, would you explain how the parking lot and the driveways are going to go, this configuration you were
There's a
explaining to me?
Paper board back there if you wanna draw it.
Oh, I can't draw. So imagine you're standing out on Province Lake looking at our property.
Yeah.
So down to the left, down, if you're headed towards Wakefield, at the very edge of the property, there is an opening for an old driveway they used to use for the field days.
Yep.
So that driveway will extend up to the new structure and that'll lead to the Sally Port for the police and kind of that side of the building.
Oh, here, Grace.
Here we go.
Chris can be an artist, cause I certainly can't.
Sally Port.
That's good. And then where did you explain where the parking is going to be for the general public and for firefighters?
So general public will be in front of the new structure.
So we have a driveway, there's already existing driveway here, cause there's an apparatus right here.
Septic in the back.
Okay, so parking here, this driveway for the Sally Port and the PD parking. And as we identified, as he said earlier, the boundary line, a lot of us always thought that kind of what you see is what you get. So right now there's like a row of pine trees right here, if you will, and everybody noses in right here. Boundary line's way over here. So we have this space that could be utilized for parking.
How large is that lot in total?
2.7 acres right now.
Hang on, I have an app for this.
I know it's small.
I love this app.
Not square.
Oh, then you.
What is it, 1102 Province Lake Road?
Get it?
Yep, hang on, zooming in.
A lot of unused space to the south side.
There is, but it doesn't, it just recently sold.
1.79 acres.
Whoops, sorry, my bad.
Driveway?
1.79 acres. But if anybody, it's hard for everybody to see, but you can see what Chris was talking about, see how the property line is kinda at that angle? That'll just give you that idea. That doesn't know what Onyx is, great.
Some of that acreage that was for sale behind it, going up.
It was wet behind us, so.
It's all wet.
It's all wet, right behind the fire
Say,
station.
that is too bad.
I say, I fell in the river
Okay,
right there.
so any other additional questions? Yes,
You
please.
may or may not know the answer to this question, but I was wondering if the insurance company gave you any indication of the impact of having a better fire station, a safer fire station on the premium. I know
There's
if
no
they-
indication in the report. We haven't had, knock on wood, we haven't had any claims as a result of an unsafe fire station. And I would think if we did have a claim, that would be when we'd see an increase. So I don't think we'd see a decrease unless something were to happen that increased it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
And we'll probably reduce the claims for the police department, get them out of that.
Well, that's the other thing too, because we don't want anybody falling through the
Right.
floor.
I'm a big guy too.
You good,
I'm good, thank you.
Melissa?
To that point, who is your health insurance provider?
Health Trust.
Also, check with Health Trust because they do offer some grants for improving employee health and
Thank you.
safety and.
Ooh.
That's good.
I'm guessing that was a loaded question.
Any,
Is there any,
Sorry. Melissa, what other grants? I know you've got a lot of them.
How about if I think of anything else, I'll forward them to
Can you-
Caitlin and you'll spread the love, how's that? Okay.
any additional questions?
Thank you.
is there any
Yeah.
data or information you'd like to see about the project that we didn't have today, other than numbers?
I just had a funding question.
I'd like to see
Where's
catwalk
Marie?
pathways designated
Where's
with
Marie?
lighting.
Yeah,
The path, yeah.
there will be lighting on the exterior of the building, so it will be lit,
I'm
but,
saying like from main building to.
yeah.
Okay, I just wanna say one thing, I think it's plain for the board of selectmen that we all support this project and we're all gonna vote for it.
And thank you very much for everybody that's put the work
Say
into
that
it.
not so loud, I don't know if they heard you.
They heard their speakers. And they're also a video on you guys
Those people, I'm talking about these.
this way.
Thank you, everybody.
Alright,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
make a motion to adjourn?
just have a question.
All in favor?
Why not move your bathroom closer to where the bunk room is? Door down here and move your closet